Wilson or Crochet? Oh, but you said that I didn't have to make a room.
Call the Village of Johnsburg, July 15th, 2025, regular meeting of the President and Board of Trustees to order at 7 p.m. On the roll, Trustee Morris is not here. Trustee Hagan? Here. Trustee Sylvanus? Here. Trustee Van Allen? Here. Trustee Falk? Here. Trustee Lutz? Here. Can we stand for the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
From the floor, since we have none, I'll entertain a motion for the omnibus agenda. Do you have a motion? No motion. Motion by Trustee Falk, seconded.
I'll second.
Was that you, JD?
Oh, yes, sir.
Seconded by Trustee Sylvanus. Anybody want anything pulled on the motion? Discussion on that motion? With there being none, on the roll, Trustee Hagan? Aye. Trustee Sylvanus?
Aye.
Trustee Van Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Falk?
Aye.
Trustee Lutz?
Aye.
Motion carried. A few short things on the President's report. Next Wednesday, July 23rd, we will be hosting the McHenry County Council of Governments. I hope that all the trustees and village officials will be able to attend. Please let Claudette know. And July 25th is Adult Night Out, right?
Yes, sir. Party in the Bird.
Party in the Bird.
This bands are $10 at a time, $15 at the door. BYOB, 21 and older. Two entertainments, Justin Wallace and Pat McCurdy.
And the 26th, the same weekend, is Christmas in July, sponsored by Sunnyside Tavern, that supports the Lions Club and our Village Shopper Cap program. All earnings go to that. Okay. Before we move on, we'll entertain a motion and then do the hearing, correct?
No, we can just open up the appropriation hearing. Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah, so at this time on the agenda, we do have a public hearing on the proposed appropriation ordinance that the village board will be asked to approve tonight. This is preceded by notice in the paper, and this is what sets forth the limit or ceiling on the spending by the village. This is something that is statutorily required or under the appropriation system, and this is not to be confused with our budget, which is not legally binding on us. It is our blueprint for living within our means. The budget is obviously much more precise, whereas at our recommendation, the appropriation ordinance is conservative, and that is higher because, as a non-home rule municipality, if we bump up against the appropriation ceiling, it is difficult to change. That's why we ask that it be higher, more liberal, and frankly not as precise or specific as the budget. So at this time, are there any comments from the public who wish to provide any commentary about the proposed appropriation ordinance? Seeing none at this time, I close the hearing and turn it over to you, Mr. President.
Okay. Move to approve ordinance 25-2609, making appropriations for the general corporate purposes for the Village of Johnsburg for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2025 and ending April 30th, 2026. Can we have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion by Trustee Van Allen, seconded by Trustee Letzker. Any further discussion by the board on the motion?
I just had a couple questions. Under first on 10, so it's I guess page 2, 1051, 484, right? Projects and actually projects, vehicles, and equipment. Because am I reading it correctly? Maybe not equipment. I apologize. So it's just the other two. So when we approved the budget previously, does that indicate there was zero that was budgeted, and then we're appropriating 90,000 for vehicles and 45 for sorry, I'm trying to read the lines. 20,000 for projects and 90,000 for vehicles.
Correct.
Okay. And then so as in regard, so vehicles obviously make sense, right? Usually is that CIP money, or is this new money to buy additional vehicles?
Correct. Well, in the event that we had a situation where a vehicle was no longer functioning, we had to replace it, we need to make sure we have it appropriated so that we can buy it. There were no vehicles purchased and budgeted for this year.
Okay, and then the projects, are we doing a $20,000 project?
No, it's just in
Okay.
anticipation, if we don't have it
Just
in
in
there and
case.
something comes up,
Okay.
we can't pursue it.
Some of the new projects were over.
Yeah. It was, because it was under police, obviously. And then the snow removal, just so I understand that, because that was was that at 0, now it's at 15?
Right, if you recall, at the budget, I indicated we budgeted all of our snow removal under MFT. I threw in an extra 15 in there in case there was some overages above the meter.
Okay. Yeah, I just questioned because it was 0 and now it's something, so
Right.
I think that's all I have.
Any other further discussion?
The trustee names need to be updated.
I'm sorry, what?
Trustee names are old.
Oh, is it incorrect? Okay, yeah, we copied from last year, so thank you for bringing that out.
I don't have anything else.
That's it? Josh?
Nope.
On the roll, trustee Hagan?
Aye.
Trustee Sylvanus?
Aye.
Trustee Van Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Falk? And trustee Letzko?
Aye.
Motion carried. Move to approve to accept bid from C&I Fence for pickleball court fencing. The bids were included in your packet, I believe. Do we have a motion and second in discussion?
I'll motion.
I'll second that.
Motion by trustee Falk, seconded by trustee Letzko. Discussion on the motion.
What's the timeline?
Tim, do we have the timeline?
So yeah, they'll be done. We had substantial complete by mid-September and final, which is just punch list shortly there by early October.
Fence, then court service? Is that how it did?
Fence posts go up and then the court surface goes around. Yeah, they're going to collaborate on. The fence needs to go in first because there's foundations, because the fence is 10 feet high. I did want to see if there was any question or discussion. It's a $30,000 cost for the acoustic fence barrier, which is currently on the west that faces Johnsburg Road, the north that faces Sunnyside Taverns and Restaurants, and the east side which faces the village complex. The reason we selected that was just we've done these courts around the Chicagoland area. There is a noise that comes with pickleball. I just wanted to see what it would cost. It's not just a windscreen, it's actually an acoustic fence, they call it, sound barrier that goes a little bit off the surface all the way almost up to the top, so that when you're playing, it's kind of inside the court. And again, just being considerate of the neighborhood. We could save $30,000 by omitting it. And if we see it's a nuisance or a challenge, we could work with C&I, he is a local, lives in Shiloh Ridge, a local fencing contractor who met all the criteria, so he was very excited to be a successful bidder. But I just wanted to raise it to you. Again, Vinny and I talked, we can go over to Ringwood, we can go to Foxwood, we can go to McHenry, and with the decibel meter, and from 200-300 feet away, which is approximately where the houses are, see if 70 or less is hit. You can always add it later, but it may come at a little extra cost. But if we buy it direct, and maybe this gentleman could help us install with our staff, if we see it's a problem. $30,000 from our donator could be additional playground equipment, could be some signage, could be some of the amenities that we've talked about, that we've shared with the family. The family wants to build 2 pickleball courts all in, and they want to donate a playground. And the village staff did all the excavation to save money and all that effort. So again, we're just trying to stretch our dollars from our gracious donator. And I just want to bring it to your attention. It's in the bid. So if we accept the bids as is, you're going to see 2 pickleball courts, fence, acoustic fence barrier, and the striping and the sport court, and the village is going to buy the posts and the net and the benches. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
So this is,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
is that the same thing that Ringwood has?
Ringwood does not have acoustic fence, they just went and got some windscreen.
Okay, so what is the visibility?
It's tough to see through.
Okay.
Is it like the tennis
So
courts?
that's- Yeah.
You know, like, because the high school didn't have it originally, and they did it more for wind, because it
Right.
was so windy up there. But, you know, is it like that material?
It's,
You can still kind of see it?
That's a windscreen also.
Okay, so it's probably
Is-
less visibility.
This
than
is
that.
because of that noise you hear. It's
Yeah.
like a very loud ping pong game. So,
It's, you
And
know,
it's,
Tim,
you know,
on this side, right, towards, you said that?
It's U-shaped right now in the bid. It's on three sides. The reason I left it off, because it faces the woods and the sledding hill. And
Well,
if and when something ever developed, we could always
I
close it off.
get
if
that,
it's
but
a-
this way, would it be, I think if it's that noisy, you know, for the people that live right across the street, I think we should consider it for their consideration, okay? But is it going to travel over and above this building, just like it's sort of like looking at the woods, you know?
That's what we were going to go look at a few sites. Buffalo Grove Park District gave us, a lot of their lessons learned. Glenview Park District, where our staff has worked before and we've done these projects. They just mentioned that, bid it now and see, because obviously stuff doesn't get cheaper. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Did those other, you said like lessons learned, did they have a lot of complaints then from
A
the
lot of
noise?
them are in a neighborhood where they're much closer.
Yeah.
Like we have the, Sunnyside Tavern, some businesses, and then we're quite a distance, we're probably 400 or 500 feet away across Johnsburg Road. So the Johnsburg Road noise is probably going to bother them more than pickleball, but just didn't want to, put it out there. And
We're pretty close to these neighbors, I would think, you know?
so Vinnie and I measured to these, and we were going to go with the, with the decibel meter and stand next to the fence, 100, 200, 350, 400, and then see what it's at. If it's less than 40 or 50, then I don't think that's a problem, but.
So we could omit this right now and then
Correct.
add it.
And then we could work with the gentleman and say, can we buy direct
Yeah.
and eliminate that cost? And then could he help us, like other contractors have done, help if we have our staff and he's our, trainer?
Yeah.
Can we just get it done then? Because again, it attaches to the fence very similarly than the wind fence. It's just,
And again, I'm still a little concerned about safety if it's not, if you can't see through it, and it's a good hiding spot for.
I can send you guys a picture of it. It's
Yeah,
not-
that'd be-
It's not bad. It's not.
What's your concern, Josh?
If you can't see through it,
Oh,
right? Then it becomes a little cave.
The one nice thing I did here is if it's not on there and it's not a nuisance, if somebody's driving by looking to play, they could look in there and go, oh, they're open, and they come in and play. Some of my staff that live in McHenry, they drive around and they're like, oh, there.
Until you
it's
get there,
open.
you can't
They
see
park,
them.
They get
Yeah.
there and people are stacked playing.
Well, if we accept, we can still take that off, though? Is what you're saying?
No, we have to change.
we have to
We go
change it
acceptance,
now.
yeah.
change it.
So what I'd like to do is if it's approved tonight, I'd look for direction. If you want to take it off, then I would issue a contract with that missing. Or I could ask him, issue it in full, and then at the pre-con, we could tell him either on or off after we do it. So I just wanted to get the approvals tonight so we could keep it.
Yeah.
And if we eliminate it, we could explore landscape design,
Yep.
continue our berm.
Yep.
That's the purpose of that berm, right, was to hopefully,
Yeah, we had a berm
Muffle some
planned along
noise.
Channel Beach. Again, we utilized all the material to create what we have, but as we get more fill and more projects, we could create that berm just like we built the sledding hill. We could do landscaping, evergreens and shrubs that will stay green and block year round. But again, I don't believe the court will be open over the winter unless you're going to shovel it off the weekend. So again, the winter, the leaves are down, noise travels even more. So just wanted to.
yeah, I think it makes sense to remove it.
Yeah, I think
I do too.
Especially because it's a donation, and then the donation can go towards the other things that they wanted to.
Okay.
You need to amend the motion?
Yeah, so we're amending the motion to remove the acoustic fence sound.
Did someone already make the motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does the motioner wish to deduct or delete from his motion the screen for the village to consider and evaluate at a later time?
Yes.
Does the person who seconded agree with that change?
Yes.
It's before you, without the screen.
Without.
Any further discussion? Okay. If there being none, trustee Hagan.
Aye.
Trustee Salinas.
Aye.
Trustee Van Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Fault. Aye. Trustee Westbrook.
Aye.
Motion carried. Move to accept bid from Chicago Land Paving for pickleball court surfacing. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
By trustee Van Allen, seconded by trustee Letzger. Did you? Yeah, okay. It's like bidding, don't move your head.
Okay.
Discussion on the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? There being none, trustee Hagan.
Aye.
Trustee Salinas.
Aye.
Trustee Van Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Fault. Trustee Letzger. Motion carried. Okay. Unfinished business. Before we move ahead with that, I just want everybody to be on the same page because Mike can speak, but before we do any voting, I just want everybody to understand that, there's been a lot of back and forth on it, and, I think Mike wants to give us a status update, and from what I hear, Mike's attorney wants a decision, okay? So,
Correct.
if we move forward,
Decision on the term sheet so we can start moving forward.
okay, so if we vote on this stuff and it gets turned down, Mike goes back to zoning and planning. If it passes, it doesn't, it passes, that's fine. If there's an update and we don't vote on it, that's fine, okay, a status update. But I just want everybody to understand that, and especially Mike, that if it gets voted on and it's a no vote, you got to start over, which is no good for you, I don't think. That creates more problems. So anyways, Mike, you want to speak?
Sorry, but are you talking about all these next items then?
Yes, I am.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to real quick introduce the team that we have here.
Item ordinance 04, I thought we agreed we were going to table. Right, so we're not asking for a vote on 04.
Which is the Hidden Harbor project. So I'll explain in just a second, but just I wanted to make sure everybody is aware of the team that's here. So Adam is our architect. Greg Kelly is actually on our board now, advisory board, helping with some of the DNR issues, and Matt is our TIF attorney, but also taking over the role as our zoning attorney going forward, so everybody knows, okay? So before I jump into the three different categories for tonight, I wanted to ask the board if you guys wanted me to do like a 3 to 5 minute overview, or Michael's probably so sick of seeing it, he's seen it enough. So
Trustees.
I'll kind of leave it to the board or discussion for if you guys want to see a quick overview of the project or not. It's nothing you haven't seen already, it's just up to you guys.
No major changes since last time you presented? Okay. I'm good.
I'm fine. Everybody's okay? Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, so thanks everybody, like I said, for coming out tonight. So basically, yeah, this is a status update, but what I've been describing to folks in the past couple of days here and getting all the agendas and stuff together is basically breaking this up, for lack of a better phrase, into 3 different categories or buckets, as I'm going to call it, right? So bucket number 1 is ordinance 252603, which is not approving the Hidden Harbor project per se. It is approving the use of car condos or vehicle condominiums within the entire village of Johnsburg per that ordinance. So that is bucket number one. Bucket number two is the Hidden Harbor specific approval, right? That is what we are tabling the approval of until the next trustee meeting. And I'd be more than happy to provide an update on where the Hidden Harbor project is, but again, we're tabling that and not looking for a vote on that tonight, okay? Bucket number three is the TIF, and the TIF term sheet that Matt and the village and I have been working, collaborating to present in front of you all tonight. So, any questions on the three different buckets or what we're looking for to get approved tonight?
Why are you breaking it up?
I kind of go over that into, once we start getting into bucket number one, which is the allowing the use. We have spent a tremendous amount of capital, resources, time, effort, and energy to get to this point, and we need something from the village showing that we're working in good faith. We're not saying that we're asking for Hidden Harbor approval tonight, but I think it's a fair ask to see if the village is going to allow motorcades within the village. So that ordinance, it's a baby step in the right direction for us. My zoning meetings and such have started by creating the ordinance to then allow it. So my hope is that we can allow the use, and when we come back in a few weeks for the Hidden Harbor project, that box can be checked, and it's one less thing we have to do next time. So in that regard, in talking about bucket number one, I think it's fair to say that the entire town loves this idea. I've heard from many of the residents, but also from many of the trustee members, that the town and everybody is 100% for Hidden Harbor and this entire concept. So we're seeking something from the village showing that we're all working together in good faith for us to continue justifying allocating additional capital and resources towards the project. I guess an early update before we get to the second category here, we have been raising capital for the past 4 weeks or so and have had tremendous success right out of the gate. We've raised roughly half of what we need in 4 weeks, which is phenomenal. It's somewhat of a tap dance for me to do that with investors, because their very first question is, do you have entitlement from the village? And I have to say no. So I can continue to do the tap dance with investors, but we are moving towards furthering discussions with the lenders, and they will not let me tap dance around it. So basically, we're seeing if we can get something here tonight, which is not Hidden Harbor approval, but the approval of the use that we've all been discussing for quite some time. So yeah, I guess with that, do we want to review or comment? Or I know Michael and Matt were going back and forth the last couple of days with some red lines on that specific document. Does everybody have a copy of that document, the latest copy? Yes? Okay, so do you, Michael, want me to keep going through all the other two categories, or do we want to vote on that one first, or
I think it's
kind of
up
get a general update?
I think it's up to the board as to how you wish to proceed. If you have any questions for Mike or his counsel, perhaps Mike's counsel will wish to approach the board.
So, as we said, there's 3 action items. The first being the Ordinance 03, which essentially creates the overall regulation of car condos, whether it's Michael's project or any potential future project. It's a generally applicable ordinance. So there's nothing necessarily specific to the regulation that we're asking you to act on tonight. We believe it's in furtherance of what occurred, the recommendation you received from the zoning board. Do they have a copy of the red line, Michael?
Yes.
Okay.
Does everyone have a copy of the red line? Okay.
So I added a couple things to the ordinance as compared to what came from the zoning board, just some stuff about storage of personal property that is reasonably necessary to the storage of the particular vehicle and the kitchens, things of that nature. I didn't want to get in a pickle where we can't store anything in there the way it was written. And then there was a reference to, what was it, Michael? The vehicle display facility, which the definition had been deleted, but that term was still being carried forward in the body of the ordinance. So that was just a cleanup item. So other than that, this first ordinance, we're not asking for specific action in relation to Michael's project, but to create the overarching regulatory structure so we can move forward in the future on ordinance 04, hopefully at the next meeting. Any questions?
With the vehicle condominiums, what's the criteria of the property to accommodate the vehicle condominiums? I guess, is it size-wise, zoning, I mean, what is it?
So it's more what's driven by the use. It's a use primarily for the storage and display of the vehicle, but then it also has these associated uses, such as office, kitchen, bar area, etc. So that's one of the major differences between the vehicle condominium and the mini motorcade, correct?
So yes, I would like to add to that. 16.9-2 basically says the property must be part of a planned development consisting of at least 15 acres in size, which includes a major component of such planned development, retail sales, and restaurant situated in B2. So the way that this was written is very restrictive to, like, if you have a 1 acre parcel and you say, hey, I want to put a motorcade up, you can't, because it says right in here you need at least 15 acres. So I don't know how many properties. I would assume it's either none or very few that would fall within that.
Yeah, so everything gets shepherded into your planned unit development process, which is a very demanding process. You'll see 9-3, everything that has to be provided to as part of the application, and it gives the village extensive oversight to place conditions, review plans, make sure that the property is developed in compliance with the plans that are submitted to the village.
So, I mean, in that regard, Mike, this is the same issue. We just don't know what the plans are. Really.
What?
Well,
we have the conceptual drawings, but there's still so many unanswered questions that we...
Michael, what is
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
I understand what we have here, but to follow up to Josh, just doesn't look any different than what we saw previous. And you're saying there's updates. Have we gotten anywhere with the county, or?
So we're mixing apples and oranges right now.
Okay.
The first is the overall regulatory structure. We're just asking to create the regulatory structure, not to approve our project, to create the structure by which we can submit.
Just deal with 03.
Right?
Basically.
So, yes.
Okay.
And why are we pursuing this? Because as Michael said earlier, he's trying to raise money, he's working with lenders, trying to get commitments, but with little to nothing to show from the village, we need to show some movement forward so we can start getting commitments from investors and lenders.
By approving it now, we can't add any more stipulations
to the
zoning ordinance.
That's
as the plan changes, right?
So,
some of our
we're mixing ordinances. Okay, 04, ordinance 04 is the one that is specific to our project. That we're going to ask that be tabled where you can put more conditions on it. Okay, on our particular project. 03 is the ordinance that creates, again, the regulatory structure for any type of motorcade. It's what gives you the ability to put conditions on it. Okay, so when 04 comes in front of you, that's when the conditions on our project will be placed. This is what gives you the authority to put conditions on the project.
Michael, I guess the question, and I think everybody is sitting here has, is Josh is concerned about, okay, move forward, we don't have the answers to the questions. Scott's saying the same thing. What risk, if we approve just that part, what risk is there to the village on these concerns and any other concern that would put us in jeopardy of changing anything? I mean, does it tie our hands and go into the future like we all think?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is why
I think
the
that's what it
petitioner,
is.
which is why the petitioner's requesting it. I mean, we've touched on this, I think it was before the board, but once this village board adopts, in the words of Matt, this regulatory framework, what we've talked about in the past is that that's a legislative decision that Mr. Oliver's use is appropriate. And he, if he meets the criteria, is entitled to it. And I think that's what the appeal is to the petitioner, to show investors that this is in place, and that is a legislative finding that's appropriate.
Subject to
Correct.
any conditions that they deem appropriate.
No. This is a regulatory framework that's in general. This is for the whole village. So first, let me just answer the question. Once this is passed,
Anybody can do it.
we're not going to amend it unless there's a separate procedure to amend it to make it more restrictive. You know, for example, hypothetically, we're not going to make the limit 15 acres, we're going to make it 20 acres. But that's a whole new process. The reason we disagree over the conditions is this ordinance, which generally applies in the village, it's in our zoning ordinance, if it's adopted tonight, does not allow us to put conditions on the property. To me, when we talk about conditions, we're talking about the next ordinance or the property itself, and we say, this is what we'd like to see. Hypothetically, this is conditioned upon IDNR approval, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Does that answer the questions, or did I just make this more confusing?
If I may,
Yes, absolutely.
approval of Ordinance 03 will not allow Michael to develop the property. He needs 04 approved, but 03 allows him to go into your process, and it's the process by which conditions can be put on his development and approved through Ordinance 04. All 03 is a structure. It's a regulatory structure that generally applicable. 04 is a specific ordinance that is specific in conditions specific to Michael's project.
Right.
So I have a
Will you-
question.
No, go ahead, Keith.
Michael, we approve this. This is going forward for the whole village, for the future.
Correct, which is why,
Anybody that still meets those conditions, the 15 acres.
right, which is why the petitioner's requesting it.
Right.
The petitioner is going to be able to, if approved tonight, to say, the village has made a legislative finding that if you're in accordance with this criteria, you're entitled to it. And what I don't want to be mistaken is, in the past, I've heard a former zoning board of appeals chairman say, well, if it's a special use, we have complete discretion. No, absolutely not. A special use is not quite a permitted use because admittedly, a public hearing is required on it, as we've had in this instance. But like a permitted use, it's a determination that if a petitioner meets that criteria, he's entitled to it, which is the appeal to the petitioner, I assume, to appeal to investors to say, we're entitled to this.
So we're setting precedent for the village, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So can I interject a few things?
Of course.
So if we were building a strip center or a shopping mall and that already fell within the existing ordinances, we wouldn't have to do any of this text amendment and create this new box for us to fit in, right? The reason we are in this predicament in the first place is because motorcades, car condos, vehicle condominiums, whatever we want to refer them as, is a very new and unique use that a lot of municipalities Naperville, for example, when they built Iron Gate, they did not have that box to put us in from a zoning perspective, right? So if we were to be building a grocery store, this entire structure would already exist, okay? So we're basically just asking the village to say, hey, we've seen your motorcade concept. Most everybody is all for the concept. We are not approving Hidden Harbor, but we are approving motorcades to be allowed in the village of Johnsburg, knowing that this ordinance is extremely restrictive with like the size acreage and stuff, for example, 15 acres, right? So it's a gesture of good faith from the village to show that we're putting our money where our mouth is, right? We're saying we love Hidden Harbor. Let's give us something tangible to be able to go to lenders and to investors and to all the folks that I'm currently meeting with and have something to say. We at least have the use type approved within Johnsburg. I think it may be helpful, Michael, and you can tell me otherwise if it's not how the meeting should go, but maybe I could give an update on just other stages that we're at with MGDOT, DNR, stuff like that, and we can also talk about the TIF and then maybe circle back at the end and vote on everything at the end.
If the board's interested.
I just have a couple questions before that. So today, right now, there is no 16.9 vehicle condominiums in our zoning ordinance, right? So this was all brand new.
It's all brand new.
And then who drafted this ordinance?
This has been a combination of...
I mean, not this one, but the first one, right? Because zoning had a hearing for a text amendment, which created this document.
Yes.
And then who authored this?
I would say 90% of it has been the village staff, supplemented by, I think in the past, we received comments from Mike and/or the first attorney who was working with him on the zoning. Matt provided recent comments that I think are blue line that he was alluding to earlier, and that was, and Matt, I'm oversimplifying, but I think removing the reference to vehicle display, insofar as that wasn't a defined term anymore, and then two, trying to liberalize to some extent what could be stored within the man caves that are related to the vehicles that are...
Yeah, there's a kitchen, right? Is there technical issues if you put a case of Pepsi in there, right? Those sorts of issues.
All right, so we had zoning, because I'm catching up, right? So zoning board had two hearings and then made their recommendation to the board, and then staff took those recommendations and created this ordinance, 16.9, right? I'm right, correct?
There was an ordinance that was brought before the zoning board for their consideration.
Okay.
And that primarily included definitions for items such as vehicle condos, the vehicle display facility that was referenced as being stricken. That was included in the other one, the original proposition to the zoning board. What was added by the petitioner later was the mini motor caves, the drive-up boat storage, and the language that was included with that, as well as the blue markups that you're seeing today.
Okay. So the 16.9 was authored and then
modified.
Did it ever come? It never came to us, right? The text amendment?
It did initially. You had a first read on it.
Okay. And we were amending that first read. So, I mean, it's not approved. It was never approved, but we're amending what was originally recommended to us, right? As it came from the zoning board.
Yes, and I would maintain that that's what Mike's attorney, Matt Welch, was explaining earlier about removing the references to vehicle displays and adding additional language about, from his perspective, enlarging the amount of storage for cars, the vehicles, the kitchen.
Yeah, so you'll see there's a sentence in the definitions that say no other storage of any kind, right? Which is
Boxes.
extremely prohibited, right? And you can see a lot of potential issues. So all I did is I pulled almost verbatim language from a different section and plugged it into those definitions.
And this ordinance 252603, this is relevant to B2 zoning districts. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then my last question is, so if this is added as a conditional use in a B2, then is this the case that we had, the Chicago Heights versus the Gospel Church? Does that become relevant at that point then? Because
it
if we're
does.
allowing it
Right.
through the text amendment, how do we say no if someone has the B2 zoning? Because this case says you can't, because the board had already decided previously that that was an allowable use within that district, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just trying to follow.
That's why, I mean, this is the appeal to the petitioner of getting the text amendment here tonight is everything that Mike just articulated, and what I would perhaps oversimplify is what Mike just explained to you is the appeal to investors, the appeal to the petitioner is that you are being asked to make a legislative finding that such special use is appropriate for this type of property with the underlying zoning, that it's 15 acres. That's why this is a big deal to the petitioner and the investors is it certainly reduces, if not eliminates, the discretion you have as to applying to this property. So as we saw with the case that you cited, the circumstance wasn't there. The village in that case had a commercial corridor. This is where we want our commercial or sales tax to be. What they left in the ordinance was within that commercial corridor a special use that included churches. So when that church made the application to say, we want to be in that commercial corridor, and the village turned them down and say, no, we prefer sales taxes. No, the court said, no, if that's a special use, they're entitled to it, provided they meet the criteria. So this isn't something that is just going to be discretionary, like, well, we can turn them down or not. No. And that's the appeal of getting the text amendment completed tonight is this isn't just an academic exercise. You're being asked to make a legislative finding that the petitioner can go to investors and say, look, while we don't have the zoning for the specific property with the conditions in it yet, here's this finding, this legislative finding by the village, that this is a special use and almost not quite a permitted use.
So if I can, the living word case, I agree generally, but the court said is you cannot deny its use just because it's a church. You've made a legislative finding that churches are generally acceptable in the area, but there may be something specific to this particular church's operations that could give you a basis to put conditions on it or deny it. And so that's what you'd be doing here. You're saying vehicle condominiums are generally appropriate in the B2 under these certain circumstances, but we also are going to have a hearing to have you submit plans and go over your operations to determine if not vehicle condominiums are appropriate, but how you plan to operate your vehicle condominium is appropriate. And are there any conditions we can put on it to minimize the negative secondary effects of your operation? So that's the type of test you're putting it into. It's not, well, it's conditional use, we got to grant it. It's, okay, you're going to go into a hearing and you're going to tell us exactly how you're going to operate this, and we're going to determine if there's any negative secondary effects. And if there are, we're going to put conditions on it, and if the conditions won't resolve those secondary effects, well, then we're going to deny it. So that's what the living word is.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to have another public hearing because we've had that, but does everyone understand the gist of what we're being asked to do tonight and why it appeals to the petitioner?
Well, because somebody then could go to another B2 property that's 15 acres and say, I want to put the same thing in. And then we're not going to be able to put any additional conditions on that secondary.
I respectfully disagree. They have to submit an application and go through your conditional use process and have a fact-finding hearing, and you can put conditions on their use if you find that their operations will have a negative secondary effect on surrounding properties. And if there's no conditions you can put on them, such that you minimize the negative secondary effects, you have the right to deny.
And then I have a question, another question. So why does it make sense to put vehicle condominiums in the business district, in a B2 district? I'm just asking because I'm trying to think, where do we have B2, right? To whoever, I don't know, whoever said it, why does it make sense that if we have B2 sprinkled around the village, right, then we need to recognize that those B2s could apply for a car condominium. And why does it make sense to even put it in a business district?
Only if they
like
meet the
the church
15
case.
acres.
Why does it make sense to allow a church in a business district? Maybe it does. I'm just trying to. Is there thought behind that? That's all.
I think the challenge was, in this instance, typically when you go to other communities and do this, they're actually in industrial districts. And I think we'd all agree that that's not the ideal zoning, industrial zoning on a piece of property.
And that
So-
would make more sense to me, or
Right.
something like that.
And so I think that's what the challenge here was trying to identify a way that would be, you'd have a zoning on that piece of property that wouldn't introduce some other uses that might be of concern.
And I do know that there's obviously some business for-profit type things there outside of the vehicle condominiums. I understand the thought process. I just don't know if I agree that it belongs to a
If I
business.
could interject, the car condos are an active use, and an active use is something that we want in the B2 in the business districts. It activates the community.
And there's other businesses on the property adjacent to the motorcades. There's a car and boat showroom for sales. There's a retail building, a convenience shop, a hotel, ice cream. So because this is like a social hub, a gathering point for folks to come and spend money, there's all these different components on the property. A marina, which was the main reason I think that we landed on B2, was for the Doves portion of the project.
And I agree with that. You have so many things going on, and I think it's all exciting, right?
So why don't we add a condition that all these uses have to occur on the 15-acre site? So that someone can't do a mini motorcade by itself.
Isn't that already part with the retail piece and with the retail component? Isn't that already part of the ordinance? The 15 acres and a retail component?
The 15 acres is in the ordinance that hasn't been adopted yet, but we can put it.
But you're right, Jamie, it is in there. If I find it again.
That's what
It requires retail in a restaurant.
Right.
So it is in there.
Retail sales, restaurant, yes.
They have to meet a lot of criteria in order for approval, so it's kind of like.
So if we want to make that a little more strict to further limit the potential for alternative, and we can also say it needs to be adjacent to the river. That's not unheard of.
I'll just say, guys, I'm not trying to be sneaky and pull a fast one on anybody or anything. Like, we need something from the village to say we support Hidden Harbor. This is my way of achieving that, right? I'm having daily conversations with lenders and investors and all that stuff, and it's like trying to raise capital with one hand tied behind my back. I need something from the village. I've heard from many of you that you're all for this project, and I just need something, and this is my something that I'm asking for tonight.
I would assume, and I'm not extremely familiar with your community and village attorney, I'll defer to you. I represent communities where some industrial communities and truck parking, as you get closer to the city, becomes a major issue. And it's not uncommon to have, truck parking as use cannot occur within so many feet of a residential district, even though we're a residential and industrial abut, right? You want to keep distance. If we were to put that in these uses must, the property must be adjacent to the river, I'd imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, is there going to be alternative sites that this can happen somewhere else?
And I kind of have a little issue with that, because then we're creating law for a specific purpose, right? For one specific purpose, right? Because you have all these elements in your, in your recipe, and this ordinance 16.9 will be here long after I'm dead.
So appropriate, what's a legitimate government interest for having doves on the river? Because you don't want trucks with boats clogging up your streets.
But we're really approving the vehicle condominiums. Like I said, I agree with the aspects and the elements of the project. It's just, but we're saying we're going to allow vehicle condominiums, but to your point in your statement, right, but it has to have drive-up boat storage if we're going to allow vehicles. So if I wanted to build a vehicle condominium on Route 31, I don't have access to drive-up boat storage, so it wouldn't be applicable to 16.
So I feel like we're going in circles, because if you're suggesting to make it less restrictive, we're all for that, as long as we can still use it. We are trying to put our best foot forward and say, hey, you guys are nervous that this is going to happen all over town, so we put all these very restrictive things in there. That was a request that we did to satisfy the village, to make it restrictive. So all for, if you would like to make it more generalized and not have the specific stuff in there, by all means.
But it's so broad-based. I mean, this project is so, I guess, important to the community. We've all heard, the benefits of it and the positive assets this is going to bring to the village. Hypothetical, what would be wrong if another, this, took off like gangbusters, some other developer found some suitable property that would meet the same criteria and said, I want to do the same thing. What would be wrong with that? I mean, we're all looking at this thing as like, oh, we got to make this thing so detailed oriented, so no one else can match that. Look at it from the other point of view and saying, this could be the best thing that ever happened to this community. The amount of tax revenue, the benefits this is going to provide, and maybe down the line, some other piece of property meets that same criteria, some other developer comes in and says, yeah, I'd like to do this as well. What is wrong with that? I mean, what is wrong with that, generating additional business that might benefit Johnsburg? And I don't understand the reluctance, I guess, because I've been sitting through a number of these meetings. I've heard nothing but positive comments from the public, heard positive comments from the various trustees, but yet we just keep going round and round and round. I just don't understand the reluctance. I really don't. I mean, what we're asking tonight is simply a vote of confidence. Just move it to the next step. It's not allowing us to, stick the shovel in the ground tomorrow and start, putting concrete in the ground. But it's obviously giving Mike the ability to make those concrete, decisions and investments with the bankers and the investors. That's all we're asking for tonight. So I guess, I really appreciate all the questions and the concerns, and I know you're looking out for the best of the community, but I think this is a great project for the community.
This is why we moved Greg to the advisory board for Hidden Harbor. He lives in Chapel Hill Estates, and he was public commenting, but he used to work for the DNR, and he's been helping in that regard too. So.
And again, I'm just trying to understand, because I just feel like there are so many aspects of your project, and so many have changed, right? So I'm just trying to completely understand what we're doing at each step, because there are new things every time, right? You come in.
Oh, it's messy, and there's a lot of challenges with this project. I completely agree. It's very unique. It's out of the norm, and that is, I feel that more than anybody, trust me. But I also strongly believe that doesn't mean it's not worth doing, right? And I give this thing my everything I have every single day. So, yeah, you guys, I need something from the village. I hear that the town's all for it. The public's all for it. We don't have any negativity on social media. Like, I've allocated an ungodly amount of resources towards this already, and I don't even know if motorcades are allowed in the village of Johnsburg. That's not okay. Like, what's coming next, and the capital and the resources that we have to allocate right around the corner, I need something from Johnsburg to say, we support this project, or we should just go to Fox Lake or go somewhere else. Like, I have to have something. So I hope you guys can appreciate that.
So we have that ordinance. After that, we have the term sheet. I don't know, do we want to discuss that?
Rick, did you have one? I would like to try and get through this.
Okay. Fair enough.
I have a question. I mean, just, originally, the zoning board okayed this, and we had some very restrictive language. And my understanding of what you guys are proposing now is to make that language less restrictive to what is allowed in the quote-unquote motorcades and storage units, correct? And did you broaden the language that says, like, anything in support of the activity
right.
of...
I pulled that from the language from the Dubs definition.
Okay.
Because it was allowed in Dubs. You're allowed to store anything associated with the boat. Okay, and I just made that applicable to vehicles, because if someone's putting their vehicle in and they put oil on a shelf, is that person violating the ordinance? There's a refrigerator, and as I said earlier, they put Pepsi in the refrigerator. Are we dealing with issues there?
Okay, so here's a hypothetical. I just wonder how you guys would address this. As we know, Len is involved with a large group of people that collect Thunderbirds. And let's just say that one of his people in his club rents a Dove or a motorcade or whatever.
Well, that language was already in the Dub from the zoning.
So now he has a car, and he decides that, oh, I have a deal where I have this wreck car over here, and I can buy this engine for $400, so I'm going to buy that and store it. And I'm not allowed?
It's not reasonably used in connection with the particular vehicle that's being stored in the motorcade.
If it's spare parts for a vehicle that is already stored? I guess that's the question I have, is how do you keep it from becoming a junkyard where people are picking up spare parts and storing them for a car that they own that is permitted? Okay? Because the language that I've seen basically says that you could stretch it and say, oh no, this is permitted.
So, what?
So, Iron Gate, for example.
Yeah.
Okay? There's a guy that has a unit there that he has 9 different sports cars. Okay? Hanging on the wall is a Formula One race car.
Okay?
Can't run. It's hanging on the wall. Are we telling the owner that spends $700,000, $800,000 on a motorcade that he can't hang the Formula One race car on the side of the wall because we couldn't figure the language out? So this came up in zoning, and what the zoning board basically said to do is put it in our bylaws and rules and regulations, and that is where we can really comb over those things, is in the rules and regulations that need to be approved also by the board, right? So they kept it very simple as they could, which is how we got to this document, which is what was recommended to the trustee level, which is now what we're reviewing and asking to be approved.
So you're saying that that particular instance would be addressed later with some other thing and not part of this ordinance?
So since our last meeting, I've had a different attorney put together all of our rules, regulations, bylaws, associations, all of the hundreds of pages of rules and regulations, all the stuff. And I put that together and submitted it to the village a few days ago. I think that is, it's a draft, it's a first draft. We did not ask anybody to review that yet. I think that's putting the cart before the horse. We need to know, does the village of Johnsburg allow car condos? Yes or no?
And I would also submit that,
Yes.
as I've said earlier, this is the regulatory framework, correct? There's a conditional use process that follows this, where you can put additional conditions on. So if that is a concern, well, then we can prohibit repair work in these motorcades, right? We can prohibit all of those things. But the flip side is what can be kept in there other than a vehicle?
The only thing that I was concerned about is the broader language that is, to me, is very vague, that basically says that anything in support of this is allowed.
So,
And
again,
that's my question, and it's up to the board,
So
but
that's
my question.
I only pulled that from the Doves definition, which was drafted by the village. So I just pulled that language from the Doves, the boats. So you can, where you store your boat, you can have all this supporting material, but you can't in the vehicle, right? So all I did was make it consistent.
Right, but you also don't want that stuff for boats, you don't want to lower.
Well, the
unit,
village already,
bigger engine.
the village already put it in the ordinance. As I said, I cut it, I used the village's language.
Okay.
Clarify that language didn't come from the village. Addition.
Okay, all right, so fair enough. But it was in front of the zoning board, I believe that language was approved. And as I said, I came on recently, so.
It's still very specific to the B2 use though. So the allowable use as a condo, or however we define it, is only allowable to B2 use or the underlying, if somebody comes before you as a planned development, the underlying use of a B2. And there's very limited sites that fit the bill for 15 acres and as of right use in this town. And they're basically right here, the B2 use on Johnsburg Road. You have a very limited supply of B2 sites that this could apply to from an as of right standpoint. So anything with this use in it is coming to you as a planned development.
Well, it's filed as a conditional use, it's a little different than a planned development. The same family.
But it's a similar process.
Does the village have a planned development process?
We do.
Yes.
And was there a reason we didn't want to pursue the planned development process?
I think that you guys are, as part of the retail. So just so there's no confusion, so I think, isn't this part of a planned unit development overall? Okay, so two, and then while there's continued references tonight to an additional public hearing, there is none at this point, just so you know. Petitioner can submit stuff requested by the village, but we keep hearing about a public hearing. There is no more public hearings at this point. Relative to the matters before you with respect to the text amendment, and we've already had the public hearing on 252604 relative to the property itself.
So say these things all get more restrictive based on what they're telling us. I guess it's everybody's concern that we can't look and put restrictions on all the other items that are outstanding? Or is everybody's concern about the immediate use being inappropriate? I don't know. I'm getting mixed vibes here.
It sounds like it's the immediate use because that's 04, right, is looking at the overall plan development, so just specific to Hidden Harbor. So it sounds like the concern is the immediate use, but I would argue the side, right, the 15 acres, the retail component. Do we know how many other eligible properties in the village would fall under something like this? Is there
Along Route 31, and
They're not B2, they're zoning map over. It's Johnsburg Road.
They are on the comprehensive plan.
and neither is all of this property at this point, B2.
Correct, that's why it's a planned
I
development.
know. It's just, this is one small facet of a much larger project that still has a lot of outstanding questions. I understand, and I understand your predicament, Mike, I really do, but that does not make it our predicament necessarily, right?
Okay.
So we don't want to do something that, by no reason of our own, but that would jeopardize our residents. So we just don't know. There's so many questions here that it's. So let me finish, please, okay? Seriously, guys, come on. If we approve this, and then we get to the next stage where you suddenly get this new information that we're waiting for from any of these other bodies that kills this project, we're left over with this. You're gone, but we're still left over with this. So yeah, you make it sound like it just applies to you, but it doesn't. So that's why again, there's so many questions that are still unanswered that really don't give us very much clarity on what we're voting for. And we don't have to be in a position to move forward because you need to get money from investors.
So I would love to get you answers, Josh. To get the answers, we need to get past entitlement. Developers do not go and do final engineering and get all the final stuff until they have entitlement. I've taken this project as far as I possibly can before the village, and I don't see the risk, to be honest, right now with what we're asking. If we want to make it super restricted and say that the 15 acres also needs to be on the Fox River, what is the risk for the village to say, yes, Mike, we support Hidden Harbor, we have this highly restrictive ordinance that allows for this new concept that you're trying to use, and it needs to be on the water, and there's nobody else in the entire village of Johnsburg that would qualify or check that box. What is the risk for the village to put that in there? You're not left with anything. You're not left holding the bag on anything. But you are giving us a fighting chance and not restricting us at this point of the process.
Michael, is that true? We can go after this, all the other outstanding issues that you have with the McDOT and Army Corps and all these other things, can that be addressed after this if we make it more restrictive? Because I think that's really what everybody's concern is, and I understand Josh's point completely, okay? There's all these outstanding issues that got to be addressed, and now we pass it and it doesn't happen, but
we're stuck.
We're stuck, but does the more restrictions, I don't know, help us protect the situation?
So you can place conditions with respect to, obviously you can try to make it restrictive in this text amendment. You also have a second opportunity, and I think that the board may have seen the conditions set forth in the draft of the ordinance for the property, which I understand is not being requested for tonight. So I can't speak to how many other properties in the village would be in excess of 15 acres and want to do this. My only caveat for the village is for tonight that if you approve this text amendment, it's a legislative finding that you are determining this is appropriate in the business district. Is it a permitted use? Do you convert it into that? No, not quite. It's almost a permitted use. And because of that legal status, you are changing your position tonight by changing the ordinance if you adopt it. This is why it's so important. This is why Mike's attorneys reached out to me. This is why Mike is before you tonight to get this. It's that legislative finding that says, yes, this is appropriate in this business district, and if you meet the criteria, you get it. Absent some unusual circumstance that, as Matt articulated earlier, is so impactful to neighboring owners that disqualifies it from that special use permit. So.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just because I heard two people say, if this happens and it's not them, what are we stuck with when you say we're stuck? Because if he doesn't end up doing it because of any of those reasons, and we have some other one that takes his idea and we want to put it there, what do you mean we're stuck, is what I'm asking.
I didn't think I said stop.
No, Josh said that.
Josh,
that's what I'm trying to understand.
Exactly. So I'm just asking, if we said yes and something fails on their end, what are we? I don't think we're stuck.
That we've enacted a law that has no applicable use.
Well, other things could go there still then. Or someone else could come in with the same idea if it wasn't Hidden Harbor. I don't think that we're stuck because we can still make so many changes, just to your point.
So Mike Oliver, just speaking tonight, what do you want? You say, I need something to go forward with your lenders, investors.
Right.
What do you want tonight from us?
I would like to know that motorcades, our motorcade concept.
So 03, you're saying?
Yeah, is a permissible use in the village of Johnsburg.
Condition.
And from there, that gets you, that opens that
That's
door.
one baby step. This is why we wanted to bring this up, is we have lots of hurdles just like this, right? This is one small baby step that we can take in the right direction to get that much closer to this coming into fruition for our town. So it's literally
So
this
it's
is a
opening
baby
a
step.
door.
This is I thought this was going to take 4 minutes and we were going to approve it and move on. So we haven't even talked about the other updates and all the other steps yet. But it's a baby step in the right direction to give Hidden Harbor some little sliver of confidence that the board supports the project. And
That you can go to the banks and other investors and
I
say,
can at least, I meet with an investor every single day at 4 o'clock, every day, okay? Their first question, always, is this use allowed in Johnsburg? Is this entitled? I can do that tap dance, and I have been, and we've been successful with it thus far. But it is.
Well, what I mean is, by doing 03, that opens that door.
It shows that the village is working with us in good faith, right? Right now, we have a bunch of talk that everybody loves it. I need something tangible to be able to show folks and say, the village supports this. This idea rocks, the town's behind it.
In principle, not in detail.
Right, I mean, our zoning ordinance does not allow for vehicle condos, right? So Mike brings us an idea, and we recognize there's a void in our zoning ordinance for vehicle condominiums, right? Which I think should be in our zoning ordinance somehow. Does it belong in B2? I mean, I know, Claudette said this town does that, and but does it belong in B2? Or are we just passing this ordinance to put it in B2 because you're already B2, or that's what you want to be?
It's absolutely the right use to go into a B2 zone. Absolutely. Yeah,
But you're
it's none of
staff
that
for the project,
underlines
right?
on
So
that
you're
we're asking for.
getting paid to say that. I'm looking to somebody up here
So
to say
we were
that this is
recommended
it's no different than a solar farm.
Well, the
right?
zoning board had a public hearing.
Are we
and
putting
they
it in the
gave
right spot? That's all I want to be convinced that we're putting it in the right spot.
So the entity charged with making the initial factual determinations about whether it's appropriate is the zoning board. And they heard testimony and plans, and they gave an affirmative recommendation.
I think Scott, I think Mike, and myself are really concerned about, and Josh, are really concerned about what we're stuck with. I mean, if we really want that to go forward, what are we stuck with if we put more restrictions on it? I just want to fully understand it, and I understand what Keith's saying, I understand what everybody's saying, but what are we actually stuck with? Michael, I mean, it's a legislative thing, I heard that, but at the end of the day, if he doesn't go forward, okay, it gives somebody else the right to do these storage condos in that same spot, and it may not be what we want to see. I mean, that's the part I think I want to understand what we're stuck with.
The zoning hasn't been changed.
Okay, but I want to see what we're stuck with.
Okay, so-
What can the next, if Mike
What was
fails,
that?
what can the
The
next?
zoning's not going to
No,
change?
let's,
No, the zoning has not.
sir,
Okay, no, I completely,
We
okay.
can sit there all night, but I think everybody's got to understand what we're stuck with if
Right.
Mike would fail, okay?
So,
Because that's what I think people here are sitting and worried.
So in that example, yes, you posed the issue, the potential of a property owner, a different property owner coming in.
Correct.
And perhaps you may or may not like the plans, but you are committed to almost a permitted use. And if that person meets that criteria, the 15 acres, the planned unit development with the retail, they can say, we want it. So the suggestion that zoning's not changing, well, zoning obviously would be changing. But that's one scenario. That, yes, I suppose theoretically, if Mike didn't continue with this, and Mike's shown no indication of that, with his enthusiasm, his commitment, yes, theoretically, if someone came in and said, I'm basically entitled to that, yeah, that would be a dilemma for the village if they did not care for the concept being proposed by that theoretical.
And if I
But
can-
would all, okay, excuse me, would all those restrictions that we put on Mike apply to the next person? I mean, if we restrict everything that we're putting on Mike and somebody else comes in and buys it, are all those restrictions put on that next buyer?
Yes, but that's a trick question. Because
I'm not
you're
trying to have
assuming...
trick questions, I'm just trying
It
to
is, and now let me tell you why it's a trick question is, when you tell me, when we put restrictions on Mike, so, and Mike's not asking for this tonight, but say that we put restrictions on the ordinance for the property. Your question presumes that we put restrictions on Mike, saying, here's 6 conditions that you have to jump through for this property. Yes, unless challenged, someone says that's not a condition that's reasonable, and goes to court and says that's not reasonably related to this ordinance, it's excessive, it's arbitrary, yes. But that also presumes that we've passed an ordinance for Mike's property when you say, can we impose those conditions on Mike that we impose on a subsequent owner? Yes, because normally, with maybe one exception recognized by the courts, that plan unit development, that conditional use permit runs with the land. It doesn't run with Mike, it runs with that property, regardless of who the owner is. Does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Okay.
So,
What if we don't like the way it looks, though, for the next guy presents it? We could be forced into it? Like everybody likes what Mike is presenting. It's
Sure.
been publicly stated that everybody likes what Mike's presenting. What are we stuck with? And I think that's the big fear here. Of
One step.
what happens after we pass this tonight? What happens that we're stuck with? That's what I'm trying to understand. I think that's what Josh is saying. I think that's what Mike and that's what Scott's saying. So otherwise, if we are restricting the same person that comes in the next time, I'm just trying to understand what we're stuck with. That seems to be the thing, right?
So I
Scott?
think that, let's assume 2 weeks from now, McHenry County DOT has approved the plan, it's as is, there's no changes, and we pass the ordinance 2 weeks from now imposing these 10 conditions that we'd like to see, or whatever they are, including the architectural renderings proposed by Mike's team. We could try to incorporate those into the ordinance as we've done, because we want to do our best effort to say, here's a picture of the property that you guys are approving, including but not limited to the architectural plans, the landscaping plans, etc., the site plan. We would try to record that and say, this is what you have to adhere to. Someone can always come back and say, well, I want to amend it. I don't want to do this architectural rendering. I want to use this one. It's an amendment to the planned use ordinance that someone would ask to say, I don't want to comply with that. I don't think that if I go from Mike's well-done architectural renderings to something else that we said, listen, we don't think that meets the original standard, the argument from the developer might be, well, how does it hurt the neighborhood? Could it be subject to challenge? Sure. But we would do our best, one step down the way, to say, here's the conditions we'd like to see so that what we envision up there in the screen comes to fruition as set forth in the ordinance.
I think it's very important that what we envision, and it's a gateway to the village, that it comes out looking nice, okay? And if, I don't want Mike to fail, if Mike would not go forward with it, that it looks like something we want to look at the gateway to the village, okay? I think that's the concern when we talked about the dubs and all other storage things. What is it going to look like? Is it conducive to the neighbors next door? I think the community, the neighbors next door, has come out and spoke for it. So I think if everybody is comfortable with not getting something they don't want eventually, I appreciate Keith's comments of, does it belong in that zoning district, But it's probably the premier property of the village that is it something we want to see or don't want to see? So I'm trying to justify in my own mind, if he fails, do we get stuck with something we don't like? That's what I'm trying to justify.
I have a dumb question. So if Hidden Harbor did not happen and somebody were to buy the exact parcel of land, would they not have to go through the entire process that I just did? And you guys would have a zillion different options as how to shut it down?
So if they pass this ordinance, let's run through your hypothetical. Mike just gives up, another developer comes in. That developer would have to put together plat of survey, topographic, preliminary concept plan, landscaping plan, lighting plan, proposed signs, architectural plan, environmental, all these plans. Submit it as an application. Submit themselves to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a fact-finding hearing and review of all those plans, where they can, just as you've done to Mike, say, well, change this, change that, don't do this, do this, and you put all those conditions on the follow-up conditional use ordinance.
So your confused look is this: there's two different scenarios here. What I'd assumed, I don't think incorrectly, was that Mike would go forward and get his ordinance for the property eventually. So what we've been discussing the last 10 minutes is the village adopting that ordinance with those specifications for the property. Whether it's Mike or Mike's cousin comes forth the next week, if we've approved that ordinance for the property, that developer could say, hey, I'm buying the property, I'm proceeding in accordance with this ordinance, and there would be no public hearing, there would be no fact-finding process. The owner, the new, different owner could say, here's the ordinance for my property, here's the conditions, and this is what I get.
Okay.
Michael, so I understand, that's if you guys approve the Hidden Harbor project.
Yes.
At the property.
Correct.
Which is not what we're talking about right now, which is...
Right, so Matt's scenario is where the ordinance is not
But
adopted.
even if the ordinance is passed, the conditional use and the planned unit development don't run with the land. They're specific to the applicant.
Let me be very clear. I'll be very specific. I completely disagree with that. I can think of one case where it doesn't run with the land. So the suggestion that it doesn't run with the land, when that ordinance is passed, that's a property right that we have to adhere to. There's a reason it's recorded with the property. So the suggestion that it doesn't run with the land, it only goes with Mike where he travels, I disagree. I disagree with the statement that you're not being asked to change the zoning here. You are. The suggestion again and again tonight that there's another public hearing to consider, I disagree. There is no more public hearing. Are we clear on that? We keep saying that, and there's no more public hearing.
You're saying in the context of this ordinance.
No. Not in the context of this ordinance.
This ordinance provides for a hearing.
Which we had. Do we agree?
Right, but I'm not...
So there's no more public hearings, okay? We keep saying there's a public hearing forthcoming. There is no more public hearing. So, my opinion is, and I will be glad to provide case law, but the suggestion that the zoning does not run with the property, including but not a conditional use, I vehemently disagree with. There's one case I can think of where the conditional use did not run with the property. It is an outlier case. It involves the village of Palatine and Horsey. I don't think there's a case outside of that I can think of in which the conditional use, the zoning doesn't run with the property. So, the point is, there's two circumstances that this is kind of apples and oranges. And the discussion that was before the board was, if we pass the ordinance for the property, with those conditions, can someone pick that up and say, I bought the property. By the way, I noticed there's an ordinance that's been approved for the village that says I'm authorized to go ahead with vehicle condos provided I proceed in accordance with the conditions, the landscape plan. What else? The architectural renderings, the site plan.
All the uses that he
Absolutely.
includes,
Yes.
they
absolutely.
have to be done.
They have to follow the ordinance, but they're entitled to it. That's a property right. It doesn't go away with Mike and Mike's folder.
I understand all
Okay.
that. I got that now.
Okay.
But that piece though, the landscaping, the design, that's 04, right? That's not
Correct.
this ordinance.
Correct.
Right, so they would still, so it's not till we pass 04 that then, let's say, Mike decides to walk away, then they could say, all right, I have this, now I can move forward with X, Y, Z as I was passing that ordinance.
So I think part of the difficulty with the confusion is what the scenario we're discussing is where Mike goes forward and gets an ordinance for the property, which is your circumstance. What I think they're addressing is where Mike stops short of getting the entitlement for that property, which I don't foresee. I know Mike's going to be back asking for that ordinance.
So obviously, we're all a little apprehensive about this, right? Is there something else? I mean, Mike, obviously, your goal here tonight is to figure out some way to say to your potential investors, the village is okay with this, and obviously we've verbalized that, but is there something else that we can offer that doesn't necessarily have this?
Well, I just think that I support the vehicle condos. I think they should be in our zoning ordinance, right? But I think it should be in our zoning ordinance as vehicle condominiums, right? And unfortunately, I mean, I feel like there should be parentheses or something that says Hidden Harbor on this ordinance, right? Because this ordinance was really just written for Hidden Harbor.
And it was very
and I don't think our zoning ordinances should be written for specific projects, right? So I just, and I don't know, I just, again, like, I think it's overly restrictive by saying you can't build a car condo without having a restaurant, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me, because now, again, this is where it's Hidden Harbor's ordinance instead of a Village of Johnsburg vehicle condominium ordinance.
I like the restrictions.
Well, I
We just go
understand.
round and round because we were told last time that we don't want this to be acceptable for the guy that lives across town. We want to control.
Well, I think we wrote this for this picture, right?
I mean,
because that picture is amazing. It really is.
Right, so understand our frustration in that we proposed one that was super loose and was allowed across town, and then we were told we need to make it more restrictive because we're nervous that we could be left holding the bag on all these properties that want to turn their properties into motorcades. So we went the restrictive route, and now we're talking about it being too restrictive.
But is there not a zoning district that it would be most appropriate so that they couldn't just build down all over town?
So we think, and we were advised by village staff, that B2 makes the most sense for this use type.
So I'll give you an example where this makes sense, that there is no brain damage here. And that is, I suspect that when the village of Mundelein, that I worked on a project involving vehicle condominiums, the reason they didn't get into this, 15 acres and the restaurant, was it went into an industrial park. The village was completely fine with that. There's no demand that, well, we want the restaurant in the industrial park. We want a marina, we want this. So that was done with very little discussion about how complementary it was. It was a singular use as compared to, this is, and I say this very complimentary, I mean, this is Disney World.
Yeah.
You have these complementary uses that are being put together to come up with this beautiful vision. And so, yes, I mean, is it less complicated if Mike just goes in an industrial park? Yep, no question. And that's why I suspect that if you go back to that Mundelein ordinance, there's nothing about architectural renderings, landscape, it's an industrial park. Two, it's not that we've gone round and round. The suggestion was by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I think, Clyde, tell me if I'm wrong, or Vinny, but I think the recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals was they wish to see it more restrictive. So when someone says this has gone round and round, not with respect to the board, no, when the zoning and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended it, I think they were apprehensive about this going in several areas, and I think it was at that recommendation stage that this, I'd say, more restrictive language got added. You know, so when it said that, well, this keeps going round and round, not with respect to the board. You know, the Planning and Zoning recommended it, and I think that's how it ended up in here.
That is true. I agree, Michael.
Michael Smoring, a question. So if we give him his approval, let him go, start working with investors and bankers, what are we as a village, what are we really out if just 03 gets approved?
03 is simply that determination that, yeah, we think it's appropriate. I don't disagree With trustee Van
Because, I mean, we're
Allen,
not doing anything with 4, this is just 3 to get him going.
I don't disagree with trustee Van Allen's characterization that this was written for this property in Harbor.
But zoning requested that, right? Zoning and planning requested those
But it's it's this board's, that the zoning ordinance belongs to all of us.
I understand that,
You know,
but this
so-
is what we wanted, okay? From what I understand, okay? Now, my big fear, and I think my question's answered, is what do we end up with, okay? And I think that's been answered. That's what I care about. I understand what you're saying, okay, but I think we're mixing apples and oranges now.
And, I mean, if we do move forward eventually and approve 04, and again, he walks away from the project, we've just approved everything we wanted anyway. So now if someone comes in and says, well, you know, I haven't heard this ordinance, that shouldn't be a big deal, because we've already approved that landscape, I mean, within that realm, right, of certain landscape, certain design,
So
so.
we can still change all that too.
Right, but it seems like we still have to approve how everything looks and the design in 04, and even at that point, we've got everything we wanted. So if someone came in, Mike walked away, someone else came in, we're still getting everything we wanted and everything we discussed.
In the scenario in which,
We approved both.
yes,
Right, so which we're not even talking about the second one right now.
A condition you can put on it is if we're not in the ground after so many months, the ordinance becomes void.
no. I don't. The zoning runs with the property. You know, just because once you, and let me explain. When you guys make a zoning decision, it's saying that this is an appropriate use for the property, okay? Now, if this board says it passes this, or it passes Mike's ordinance for the property and says, this is completely appropriate, this is wonderful, we are passing it, we hope we get this. But if you don't do it within 6 months, it's gone, it's void, it disappears. Why would that be? The judge would say, 6 months ago, that zoning was determined by the village board. There was a decision that that's completely appropriate. What changed in 6 months? Tell me. And what would our explanation be? I don't know, 6 months passed. So municipalities used to do that with variances, and they would say, if it's not built upon in 6 months, the variance is gone. The appellate court visited that issue and said, no, if you determine that there's zoning relief associated with that property, that someone should vary from the zoning, what's going to be the change if they don't build it in 6 months? So I don't want to give you assurance that, well, if he doesn't build it within 90 days, it disappears poof. No. I don't think that makes sense. What would change in 90 days? If we just made the decision that this was an appropriate use of the property, why would that change in 90 days or 6 months? So I don't want to give you the assurance that if you put a deadline in here, which I'm not sure Mike could live with, as he's very carefully explained with his challenges with the other municipality or the other government agencies, I don't think that would stand the court scrutiny. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, Michael Small, we as a village, we're not going to be in any financial hole or anything like that. All we did was pass something that is precedent. But how much do we have on the horizon, people even asking for this type of stuff?
Right. And then two, I agree. It's not as if this is that text amendment that Mike's team is asking for, it's not a financial issue.
To me, I say, I'm for the approval of it. Give it to them, and if 03 is going to go open doors for you, the impetus is now on you to get these bankers, lenders, all on your side. We still aren't doing anything with 4. All we're doing is giving them 3, giving them some room to run.
And I guess I just want to clarify, the term "stuck" was mentioned several times. I think that was a not appropriate term to be used for what the village, I think it's more of a blessing than being stuck, because you still had the other ordinance to fall back on to, if Mike does walk away and the ordinance is there and another developer picks it up, it still has to meet all that criteria. So no matter who does this project, it's still going to be a blessing to the village, with or without Mike. So I think stuck is not
Yeah,
appropriate.
to me, take his face out of it. Our concern is it's ABC or XYZ that's come in there, wants to do it, and we all agree to it, how it's going to be done. Nothing against you, Michael, but I'm just saying, if it's going to work that way.
Right. Any other comments from this side?
I just have one more question. I do have one more
And I'm
question.
sorry.
That's okay. So with all of the different uses, right, so let's say there's like 3 or 4 different types of uses going on here. And in this case, this ordinance will allow all of those to occur in B2, right? So now, let's say that we didn't allow, I'm just going to pretend, a restaurant in B2, it had to be B3. How would he still be able, how would his project still be able to move forward?
It's a planned unit, right?
Okay, I'll let you answer first.
No, finish your question.
Well, I was just going to say in response to that, then why can't we put vehicle condominiums in I and allow him to where the vehicle condom or the vehicle condos are going? Why couldn't we allow for that in his case, even though we only allow them in I? Is there some way to give him some allowance to build those there and still be able to use all the rest, which
Yeah, so I think,
I mean, there has to be some example somewhere where there's multiple uses going on and they don't really all fall within one district.
so I think this is, you could, so theoretically, you could say, theoretically, whether this is a good idea or not, why don't you zone a part of the property for vehicle condos industrial? And you put in that classification. But I think that given the property is zoned already B2, as I understand it, I think that this is one part of the recipe. This is one ingredient insofar as when the ordinance for the property is before you, he's going to be asking for, as part of an overall plan development, hopefully that picture there, that these vehicle condos, in addition to these being permitted, we will also have a restaurant, what's the other?
Ice cream shop.
Ice cream shop.
Retail
Well,
building.
Retail sales in a restaurant. So when we say retail sales, that's Mike's alluding to the showroom and then the restaurant, which are already permitted in B2, but that would come before you as one total package with at least the property boundaries of each use set forth in that site plan. So his key, I mean, what he's asking for approval here tonight is that vehicle condos be allowed as a conditional or special use as part of this zoning district, with the idea that eventually when the next ordinance comes before you for the property, that this is one of the ingredients to it, that this is one of the uses. That makes sense?
So,
Can I add something?
Please.
yes.
Because it's not a solution in my mind. I mean, like I said, I mean, if we could clean this vehicle condominiums up and allow it in an I and still push forward with this project, my mind at least is separating some things, because again, I feel like if a developer wants to come in and build vehicle condominiums somewhere else in town, like this seems ridiculous to me, that he's going to have a restaurant and all these other things. So it's like we're pushing too many things together in this 16.9, right?
I like the restrictions.
But Keith, remember, zoning told him to restrict restaurants, do all these things. Because I'm sure that wasn't.
But again, we're doing it for Hidden Harbor.
Correct.
It's writing
It's
this
site
ordinance
specific,
just for one.
but we, as, not our group, but, and Cleta, we were at that meeting, they were the ones that wanted it that way. So it's not that he came up with the idea.
Listen, I'm not
Zoning came
disagreeing
up with it and
So-
said,
So let me ask this. So the question to me is, would you, in order to allow this to be more general use, the vehicle condos, is it your idea that in the future, the village open this up or even amend this to say vehicle condos would be allowed as a permitted use in the industrial zone?
But how does that affect Hidden Harbors project. So yes, I would say.
Yeah.
And then is there a consequence to the Hidden Harbor project?
No, so I think it would be more appropriate, given that we didn't publish for a text amendment that says we're going to allow vehicle condos in industrial zoning. I think that we would have to have a separate process rather than draft it up right now because we didn't publish for it. But you could in the future to say, if the idea was to liberalize vehicle condos and say, we want to do what Mundelein did. We want to have vehicle condos as, say, permitted or special use in the industrial zone, good. That would be up to you. You'd have to have a public hearing. Zoning makes a recommendation, comes to you as the final vote.
The problem with that on this particular piece of property is take a look at all the industrial uses that are allowed in industrial zoning, and that would open the door for those uses to be.
We're going to show you right here, that's what it would look like, industrial. You want industrial zone?
Sir, let us finish this, okay? We know what it looks like, we've seen it.
So if you were to zone a portion of this and put the condos in industrial zoning, that means in the future, the industrial condos don't happen, they go away, you're looking at industrial use on that property. And is that appropriate there at the interest of your community?
So they get it changed to industrial, they would have to change the entire property.
Well, whatever portion it's going to sit on, but that means that that piece is now zoned industrial and open to industrial uses.
Probably dealing with spot zoning if we zone it to industrial.
That's what I was curious, like, can you do that? Can you take a 15-acre parcel and put an I right in the middle of it? And have it be B2 all the way around and it's on the same pit?
Yeah, whether that makes great planning, but, that's part of the plan unit development process is you have different uses. Again, going back to Disney World, you've got your monorail, here's the transportation hub, here's the retail, here's the amusement, here's the hotels. It's these very different mixed uses. Could you theoretically do that with zoning districts? You could. Whether it's a good idea for planning or not, that's a different question.
So no.
Well, here's my hesitation with respect to as it affects this property is, it's not that I'm asking, I wouldn't want to ask the petitioner to go through another process to rezone part of the property to industrial. That's all. That's my only apprehension.
I think we beat this to death enough. I think that it comes down to one thing right now, because I see different faces, but I think it comes down to one thing. Do we want to make it more restrictive and then call the question? Does anybody disagree with that? Anybody think it should be more restrictive or some changes should be done to this? Because Mike wants us to call the question, right?
We don't have a motion or a second on this.
Well, I'm going to ask for a motion right now. Okay. Any more discussion? Do we have a motion? A motion. Motion by Mike Falk, seconded by Scott Lutzker.
Motion to approve the text amendment as presented here?
Yeah, because we haven't.
I just didn't hear anything after motion.
Well, we didn't ask if there was any more restrictions. And so it's moved to approve ordinance 25-2603, amending section 16, conditional uses, adding section 16.9, vehicle condominiums of the Johnsburg zoning ordinance. So we have a motion and a second. Do we want to have any more discussion or questions? Does anybody have any? On the roll, Trustee Lutzker. Aye. Trustee Falk. Aye. Trustee Von Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Sylvanus.
Aye.
And Trustee Hagan.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
We're not even talking about 2604, right, Michael?
Correct. We're tabling that one.
Okay. And the TIF term sheet, Michael, you've gone back and forth on that. Is there a lot of things that I read it, it makes me crazy.
Ed, I have a question / statement at this point for that.
TIF?
Yeah, so before we get started with that one, just a comment or suggestion from me. I don't know how many TIFs we've done in the last 10 years.
One.
That's what I thought. With that, with missing a board member, with the amount of money being asked and all this information, I mean, is there any way we can make this a first read and not a vote so I can feel a little more comfortable?
I definitely think it should be a first read and not a vote.
I would feel much more comfortable. I don't want to vote the wrong way, but this is pretty intense stuff, so that's just my...
It keeps changing. Through today, it changed.
Yes, it sure does.
But I think we should hear what the,
Yeah, it'll be a
discuss it.
first read, but we don't have to vote on it tonight.
but I think it's important to understand too what the actual TIF term sheet is versus approving the full-on TIF, which is not what you're asking for today. But I'll let, you can say
So
that.
this is a term sheet in front of you. The purpose is to lay out the key terms so that it gives confidence to the village, as well as Mike, to incur expenses and furtherance of the TIF. The TIF consultant alone is probably going to cost somewhere around $60,000, give or take, depending on how demanding the process is, which Mike is going to have to fund. On top of that, we have the drafting of the redevelopment agreement, Attorney Snoren, as well as myself, which is time, resources, expense. So the goal of this document is just to make everyone feel comfortable. We're generally in agreement on how the document should be drafted. It's non-binding, and the devil's in the details. Everyone's aware. Everything's subject to further negotiation. But again, this is giving a comfort level to start expending time and expense from furtherance of the RDA and the TIF. So this is based off of just a general term sheet. We tried to identify the main issues of the RDA, but not all of the issues. Right? Designation of the redevelopment project area, basically what I just said, retention of the TIF consultant. The only, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only issue we have remaining on this section is whether Michael can be reimbursed these costs through TIF down the road. I think the village is generally in agreement with the terms of Section 4 other than that issue. Okay? Our position is we would like to see this reimbursed. One, we submitted, I don't know, did everyone see the gap analysis that was provided? Basically, to enter into an RDA, you have to meet a but-for. But-for the TIF, this project would be infeasible. So we created a gap analysis and laid out all the data and said, there's a $7.3 million gap on a $36 million project. And a lot of that has to do with the Riverwalk, the public benefits, et cetera. It's our understanding the village has a policy where they want all the TIF dollars to go to public benefit. So we're trying to honor that as much as possible. However, the bottom line on the TIF analysis is we need to get to $7.3 million of reimbursable costs, or else we can't meet the gap. And that's our driving. It's sort of fungible, what's being reimbursed, as long as we hit that number for us. Obviously, it has to comply with statute. You have the policy that's more limited. We recognize that. In light of that policy, it's very common that these consultant expenses are reimbursed to create the TIF. We would ask that Mike will pay them, the 60, 70, whatever it ends up being up front, but down the road, as the project generates TIF, it would be eligible for reimbursement, especially because the lion's share, if not all of this TIF, will be going for public benefit costs. So that's the one issue in Section 4.
Can you explain, just 'cause it's relevant right now, so I don't mean to cut you off, but can you explain to the board how that is then, that 7.X is being paid back, right, or how it's being allocated? Just so we understand that it's not, we're not writing a check for it, right?
Correct.
Just from the property.
So when you create a TIF, you create a the baseline EAV freezes as of the date you create the TIF, right? So it's going to be nominal here. Over time, as Michael builds his project, the valuation of the property is going to go up as a result of his investment in development. Well, all of the increased valuation above the baseline that I stated earlier goes into the TIF account. So as Michael pays the taxes on the property, it will go into the TIF account, which will be eligible to reimburse him for the costs that are authorized under the RDA.
How long of a duration is it that you reimburse?
23 tax collection years is the length of the TIF. 23 years.
And was there a new, I know I asked this before, so it's probably annoying, but with some of the things passed recently, with the state, weren't there new either limitations or guidelines around a TIF, or no? Where it shortened that 23-year period to 10 years?
No, there's been bills that have been kicked around, but nothing's gotten out of committee.
Okay.
The timeline of the TIF has not been. There's a process where you go for an extension, but whether the TIF goes for 23, it's statutorily it's 23. That's not to say if after Mike, let's say, goes gangbusters and the valuations are through the roof and Mike's paid back relatively quickly and there's 10 years left on the TIF, theoretically. I'm not saying that's how it will play out, but the village has the right to terminate the TIF if all your other liabilities have been retired.
Thank you. Can you explain the public benefit?
I was just going to go front to back, if that's all right, and we get into number 11. So number 5 is a description of the project. I believe we are generally there. You'll see a note. We are not in possession of the project exhibit. The exhibit is the site plan that was submitted as part of the zoning. Again, this is not to be extremely detailed. It's just to lay out the key business terms. So the site plan that went in front of the zoning board and hopefully will be approved by this board at some point in the future, that's the project. Okay. TIF incentive. So as I had mentioned earlier, 7.3 million in today's dollars is the gap. Mike has to take out financing. Based off of the projections that were the tax projections over time, this would be over the 23 years, approximately $16.4 million, 20 years from now, which that's the interest accrues. If anyone's seen their mortgage, that's how it works. He's got to take out loans to finance this, and so he'll be paying back his loans.
So 8.25, by 8.25% over 23 years, he gets to do the 16?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's in the gap analysis we can provide it to you.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Sure.
That's
absolutely not a problem.
At 8%, don't you double every 8% every 10 years? So then wouldn't it be times 3?
But it's getting paid off. You got to take into account the real estate taxes that are coming in annually. That's paying down the principal balance. Okay. So number 6, the TIF incentive. I think, at least with staff, we're generally in agreement in the terms of page 6. So in the red line, actually, there's a date that this shall be complete no later than January 1st, 2028. What we had proposed is as provided in section 12, and basically 18 months after we receive all our government approvals. And the reason it's stated that way is because we're dealing with third parties. We don't know, we can't make IDNR, we can't make MCDOT all go on our timeline. So we're willing to commit to 18 months, but we can't identify a specific date because we can't identify a specific date where we're going to get all our permits from IDNR and MCDOT. So we're going to build off of once those permits are issued. Now we're agreeing to diligently, in good faith, take all necessary action to apply for those permits. But again, we can't, if they drag their feet, it can make the date set forth in Section 6 difficult. You'll see a strikeout in Section 6A. That was a carryover from a different transaction. That's not applicable. We agree to the strike. Section 7, Salem Avenue. I think, at least with staff, we're in Village Attorney Sworn, we're generally in agreement in the language that's contained there about how we're going to deal with Salem Avenue. We're agreeing that if any change is made, we'll come back.
Any material change?
The administrator insisted on any change, and
We struck the,
Okay,
they
so
struck that last version.
Yeah, they struck it.
I'm not sure which version this is from the 4 days, so it's any change?
Yeah.
Okay,
We've conceded the point.
okay.
We were asking for material change.
I think you have their version there. I don't think you have our most recent version.
There's been a lot of versions.
Section 8 is pretty straightforward. We're responsible for all the debt and equity to build the project. Certificate of completion. The village will not issue a certificate of completion until the following 2 conditions are met. So let me explain what a certificate of completion is. There's a certificate of occupancy, which is under your code, and then there's a certificate of completion, which generally appears in redevelopment agreements. Certificate of completion is saying, certificate of occupancy is saying the building's up to code. The certificate of completion is saying the development is compliant with the agreement. Okay. So, before we get our certificate of completion, which then kicks off our ability to get reimbursed as taxes come in, we have to have completed the entire project, and essentially as evidenced by the certificates of occupancy being issued. Okay. Assignment, there's some heartache here. We're willing to take input, but it's actually, we saw it more as a concession for the village. This project is here forever, as all of you know, and as all of you are trying to plan the best, right? And we don't know where Michael will be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. And all this was providing is that he can't assign this until it's he can't sell it in any form or fashion without village approval in its sole discretion prior to the certificate of completion being done. And that if something happens down the road, we still have to get your approval, but now it's a reasonability standard, and it defines, and essentially that who's ever assuming the project has to prove to the village that they have the financial and operational know-how to take over the project. And that's, there seems to be a lot of concern on this section. We're just trying to plan for things we can't plan for. Okay? Mike has no intention of walking away from this. So, Trustee Hagan, to your point, Section 11, the eligible redevelopment costs. So, the TIF statute has a long list of what type of expenses are eligible for reimbursement under the TIF Act. That doesn't prevent the village from being a more narrow list as long as it's authorized by the statute. So my understanding is the village doesn't want to reimburse anything that's eligible under the TIF Act. It's this public benefit standard. All right. So here's our goal. We're trying to fit within your policy as much as possible. But we do have a math problem, as evidenced by the gap analysis that we'll provide you all a copy. Michael, would you be able to send them a copy, or do you mind if I email it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So we'll email you a copy of the gap analysis. Essentially, what it shows is that, but for the TIF, there's a $7.3 million gap in today's dollars to make this project happen, with all the bells and whistles that have been shown here, with the Riverwalk, the light tower, the doves, the restaurant, the playground, etc. the TIF has to make up the gap. That's why they call it the gap analysis. All right. So it's fungible to us what is reimbursed as long as we hit that number, because he's got a dollar amount that we need to meet. One, to prove up to lenders, to investors that this project's feasible. So this is part and parcel to everything. So we think with the list here that in this last version gets us across the line, and we can go over the numbers if you like. Riverwalk, associated amenities for public benefit. Number 2, shore stabilization pier structures required for the Riverwalk. Expansion of the harbor. Repairs and improvements to existing Salem. And we added some language about storm management systems associated. Next section. Improvements to public roadways and associated stormwater management systems. We added scopes of work within the public right-of-ways, grading, public utility relocations, vehicle guardrails, ramps, sidewalks, etc. The shared use path. Number 7, the path for pedestrians and cyclists. Number 8, off-site extension. This was added by staff version just prior to this. The off-site extension of the gravity sewer main from the village lift station to the northeast corner of the subject property. Mike, you reviewed that, and you believe that's doable?
Yes.
Okay. Number 9, demolition of the Jugger Dune facility. Number 10, grading and site prep. Number 11, land acquisition. Now, the issue here is a lot of this is being used for public benefit, this land that's going to be allocated. And again, we need to make sure we hit the 7.3 number. Number 12, costs incurred in furtherance of Section 4 above. Section 4, again, was the TIF consultants, things of that nature. And then we originally had engineering, architectural, and legal broadly. Staff struck it. We countered today in furtherance of the engineering costs and things of that nature that are incurred in furtherance of the public items. So that's the list of public benefits these are the 13 items. Even though there's a lot more that can be reimbursed under the statute, the RDA would limit us to these 13 items. Finally, project timeline. Touched on this earlier. Essentially, we're gonna as soon as we sign, we're off to the races, getting everything together. We're trying to get our governmental permits right now, but we cannot guarantee when they'll be issued. So we're just saying, as soon as they're issued, we're going to be ready to go 18 months. Okay. Village remedies upon default. These are just traditional remedies you'd see in most municipal RDAs, and the same with number 14. And then finally, in italics there, it's just stressing that this is a non-binding document. It's just meant to outline the terms to allow us to start working towards a more detailed agreement, as well as give Mike comfort in retaining, I believe, it's at the end of the day, it's up to the village, but I believe it's SB Friedman who's your TIF consultant. And that's so Mike can retain SB Friedman to begin the process, which again is a sizable financial commitment on Mike's part, without a guarantee of an RDA signed. And that's why we're just asking for the term sheet, to know we're generally on the same page.
Good. If it's okay, I'd like to build a couple points on top of what Matt just mentioned. So, Matt, I guess we've been in discussion with some of the village staff and board members and whatnot, but I guess I would first like to just, the 3 basic things that you need to have to qualify for a TIF, all right? The very first 3 boxes you need to check. I just want to make sure everybody is aware of, right? It needs to be a blighted piece of property, all right? I think we all agree in this room that the property is pretty blighted, so very much checks that box, okay? It needs to be a public benefit or have public benefit components to it, which with our expanded harbor and the public being able to pull in there, and the river walk, and that river walk being attached to the public sidewalk on Chapel Hill. There's definitely a public component to everything, right? So we check that box. And the third one is the developer cannot afford the development on his own. Trust me, I checked that box.
Well, it's not, but it's not specific to you.
Right.
It's financially infeasible, it's objectively infeasible.
Right. So, I think, Matt, I guess you've done many of these before. Just why does TIF exist in the first place, and why is this particular project a home run or a slam dunk for TIF eligibility, for lack of a better phrase?
Well, it's to rehabilitate blighted properties, to make an infeasible project for whatever reason feasible.
Okay, so a couple other things I want to just point out is the McHenry Riverwalk that everybody's very familiar. How it was all done was through a TIF. Okay, so in my mind, this is like the start of Johnsburg's Riverwalk. This is the very beginning. The Riverwalk of McHenry was funded with TIF. And I think that's important to mention in our community because we all have gone there. We all go there all the time. We've seen Patrick's Day and stuff. Two more things to add, and then I'll turn it back over to Matt and everybody else. I printed out the term sheet, the latest copy that Michael and Matt circulated this afternoon. I was nervous because it was such last minute that everybody may or may not have gotten a copy. So I made sure. I filled my printer up with paper today. I just made so many. So if everybody could look on page 3, what I highlighted of the attached. This is, I know we just beat to death the ordinance to allow motorcades in the village. I've heard rumblings through town and just through friends and whatnot that there's certain members that are concerned about giving us entitlements and approving stuff prior to MCDOT and that. So, and there's concerns around Salem Avenue, right? So basically what I want to just highlight or point out to the group is just in section 7, number 2, what I highlighted: in the event of government authority, MCDOT, requiring any change to the existing full access to Salem Avenue, i.e. limited right-in, right-out access, the developer shall resubmit to the village and planning, the village and zoning board. Either part, if that happens and neither party can resolve the issue in 180 days, either party shall have the right but not the obligation to terminate the RDA. This is my way of giving the board, giving you guys additional level of comfort on the Salem Avenue stuff, right? And just everybody I know is nervous about approvals and conditional approvals. We think conditional approval should suffice on its own, but I know that there's concerns that what if we approve the Hidden Harbor project and MCDOT comes back after the conditional approval and says you must do right in, right out. I am giving the board the ability with this to affect the $7.3 million in TIF, which would be a massive thing for us, right? So I'm literally giving the board the keys to that depending on the outcome of Salem Avenue, and my hope is that you value that value and take that into consideration when we're back in a few weeks at the next meeting looking for approval on the 04 ordinance. Okay? So those are just a couple things I wanted to mention. The last thing I'll say is just the timeline to get a TIF is a lengthy one. And this is not, approving the term sheet is not the final end-all, say-all. There's a 50-page plus document that we will circulate and get everybody's comments, concerns, and red lines, and all that stuff. The term sheet is basically saying, we, the village, recognize the project, we recognize the value that TIF can provide it. We don't know that maybe we would go another 30 years with the property continuing to be blighted unless we implement some sort of program like TIF. And we're agreeable that at Hidden Harbor there's a deal at the end of the road if you follow the TIF process, right? That's the goal of the term sheet. It's just kicking off the process, allowing us to start communication. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the taxing bodies and that, right?
Well,
Is that
that
after
would
the
be
RDA?
handled by SB Friedman in the village.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention those couple of things. I'll turn it back over to Matt, so thank you.
I've gone through the whole document. I don't know if there's any fundamental or requested changes you'd like to discuss.
I just have a few questions. I guess in your experience, once this is approved, how long before the RDA is in front of us?
So, I don't want to disagree with Attorney Sworn, so
An estimate.
The agreement has to be approved. You can't approve the agreement until the TIF exists, okay? So, the estimate of creating a TIF, if you're going extremely fast, 4 to 5 months, I'd say 6 to 8 is normal. So what my experience has been, SB Friedman would be retained. They'd initiate an eligibility study. They would report back to this body and say, all right, we reviewed all the statutory elements, and we believe this is eligible because of X, Y, Z. And from there, they move off into the next phase, which is sending out you pass an ordinance setting a public hearing. They'll send out notices to affected taxing districts, property owners within 750 feet of the boundary. There's an interested party registry that you put in the newspaper, and you'll give note. Well, Mike's the only property owner in the TIF, but he'll get notice of the public hearing. In the interim, you'll have what's called the Joint Review Board. Certain affected taxing districts, the main ones, they'll put out a notice. They'll come to Village Hall, I assume, and SB Friedman will put on they'll review their findings and the proposed redevelopment plan. And you'll take any comments from the Joint Review Board that they may have with the TIF. Hopefully, you get a recommendation, an affirmative recommendation from the zoning board that then comes to this board. So that's the JRB. Then the public hearing occurs. That's where the public generally can come up, and essentially the same presentation will occur. Public puts in any testimony they want. Then 14 to 90 days after that public hearing, there will be 3 ordinances drafted by the village attorney to approve the TIF. One's approving the redevelopment plan, identifying the redevelopment project area, and then authorizing tax increment financing, which essentially goes to the county and tells them, okay, when these taxes come in, put them in this special account.
So, and within that, within the RDA, and as that comes up, the things that might been a question, right? Eligible for redevelopment costs. Those are all things we'll continue to see and we can discuss and we can change at that point if we don't feel like enough's going for public benefit, like for the kind of the way the village wants to see it, or is that?
We're going to need certainty, right? We need to know he's raising money, he's taking out loans, he's signing contracts with contractors. There's going to be an RDA where hopefully we go through this process, and maybe there's some massaging of what's listed here along the way. But when the RDA is signed, that's it.
Right, yeah, and that's what I'm asking, right. Is like with the RDA, until it is signed or approved, we still have, by approving the term sheet, we're not saying that it's necessarily set in stone that all of these items, in section 11 that we're saying.
Correct, but we hope, just working in good faith, that this isn't thrown out the door whatsoever, right? It's giving everyone comfort that hopefully there's nothing fundamental or insurmountable to deal with on a business term.
And that would be the same with with the assignment. So section 10, same idea, right? If there are any changes or verbiage that we wanted to see there, that would be something that we'd address.
Yeah, listen, if we can delete that section, just leave it for further negotiation. Again, we don't know what we don't know. I can't predict where Michael's life's going to be 20 years from now, right? So that's all that's doing.
Okay.
So the term sheet again is just kicking off the process. It's not like saying this is exactly, like it's still like Matt's saying, subject to be massaged, and we hope we don't throw it out the window. But it's basically recognizing the program for the project, and it is signaling to us that we should start incurring the expenses to put the RDA together, to get all, do all that stuff.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at with those questions too, is it's not, like you mentioned a couple times, right? It's not a legally binding document. It's allowing you guys to start into the process of the TIF.
It's a gentleman's agreement, right? We hope that it gives guidance and governs, provides the baseline for negotiations, but I'm sure just as you wouldn't want to have a village attorney sworn working on this and we start just taking a left turn off of what's on this document, right? It works for both sides to give some confidence.
And as far as the financing, like at the end of the day, you still have to raise the full $38 million. It's just you're being reimbursed with this TIF for that. Right?
The TIF doesn't, we're doing what's called a pay-as-you-go TIF. So I don't get reimbursed for years after we incur all the costs.
It's incrementally reimbursed.
I have to pay the taxes, and then literally it goes into a special fund, and then it literally turns around and comes back. Like I even still have to pay them.
Right. So the village, outside the potential, the future tax dollars, right, which is what's funding the TIF, the village is not on the hook for 16 million or 7.5 million necessarily.
No, if something were to go wrong, you'd be in default and you wouldn't have an obligation. But regardless, if the taxes weren't being paid, there's no TIF dollars. Right? So you wouldn't owe anything. The general fund is not guaranteeing any of this.
Okay, that's good enough. Thank you so much.
And one more status update I think that is relevant to bring the new members of the board up to speed is just we did have SB Friedman do the initial what did you call it, Matt? Eligibility study. So we have had that done already. They did give a report of the area. We actually had two done, one for the downtown district TIF potential, and then one for our project itself. So that estimate was actually the increment that was produced from that study was actually significantly higher than what we ended up going with a more conservative approach from Matt's law firm. So that part of the step in the process has been completed already, just so everybody is aware.
Thank you.
Some of these items, how do you determine them as being a public benefit, like expansion of the harbor, right? How is that a public benefit?
So the harbor, this is
so basically, because all of this is public access and you can come in on a boat, and we're giving my favorite phrase, or one of my phrases is putting Johnsburg on the nautical map, right? On the boater's map. Every boat just drives right through our town. So giving them the ability to pull into the harbor and stop, this is exactly like the McHenry Riverwalk. These are transient piers with the Army Corps, and the public can come and park their boat and spend money at the restaurant. They can go across the street to the Mexican restaurant. They can go across the bridge. So anytime you provide any village, town, city with a harbor, it's definitely a massive public benefit.
But that's a public park that you're comparing it to versus a private business, right? This will be your harbor. It's not.
It's the public waters of the United States. So as soon as I take the private land that exists right here where the Jugger Dunes is, and I turn it into water, trust me, I've argued this point with the DNR quite firmly, it is converted from private land to public waters of the U.S.
But the slips will be your money.
So I'm not renting any of these slips. They're transient slips, which the Army Corps does not allow overnight mooring.
You're not renting any of the slips anymore?
We have 16 private slips that are back here. This is the only row of private slips. Everything else is considered transient slips. We got pier counts from the Army Corps that gave us rights to multi-use versus transient slip use. All of the McHenry Riverwalk piers that I park at, that my friends and whatnot park at, are considered transient use piers. That is predominantly what we are putting in the river.
Right. But the property that they're walking onto is private.
So, good chance we're going to have to deed the Riverwalk to the village of Johnsburg, at least a portion of it. So, we'll see where those discussions lead in the coming
And like the ramp will still be private?
The ramp is private.
Work within the public right-of-way for getting utilities to your private business? I don't understand how that is.
So let's understand why TIF was created and why the use is for it, right? So basically you have a property that's unbelievably complex and developers they're not incentivized to go build anything there because they'd have to spend too much money, allocate too many resources to fix it, right? So the state, and Matt, if any of this I'm saying is wrong, you chime in. They basically came up with TIF to allow blighted properties that have all these complexities to incentivize developers to deal with all the headaches. So for example, power lines, all the power lines that need to be relocated, the cost of that is tremendous, right? That's one of a zillion constraints tied to this property. So we can slice up however we would like the TIF eligibility, and it's ultimately up to the village and to tell us what is eligible and what's not. The state has their set of what's eligible versus not. Our best guess, or not guess, but our gap and everything shows that we have over $12 million in TIF eligible costs. We are asking for 7.3. We don't care how we get to the 7.3. We are saying if we want this, we as a group need to figure out how we get to the 7.3. That is essentially what we're doing.
Or the project as presented, it can't be financed, right? Now we're cutting away things, and it just devolves back into the zoning process.
Who makes the determination? So it is the village, we make the determination whether or not it qualifies as a TIF-related expense or not?
So,
with consultation from SB3.
Well, yeah, ultimately, it would be those.
Right.
The RDA would be the governing document.
So what if, like on the Riverwalk, I know one of Tim's notes was that the Riverwalk is kind of predicated on IDNR allowing you to build what you want to build in your design on that part of the property. What if they say you can't?
Yeah. So we've had a contingency plan with the IDNR for quite some time. I've battled them for the past year and a half. We have implemented our contingency plan a week and a half ago. So we're basically caving. We've been fighting with them all along to forgive the 36-year-old seawall violation. They're holding tight. They're holding to their guns with it. We've tried everything we could possibly think of, and we've run out of time. So we have conceded to a hybrid approach of basically still achieving the vibe, feel, and look of the Riverwalk as you see it here, just basically putting it on a pier opposed to, and letting water go underneath of it, opposed to just encapsulating the existing violation. So,
from the top side, it would look the same.
Correct.
It just would have, it'd be a pier, like the McHenry Riverwalk, where it's kind of like a stationary pier. That's kind of the concept that we're looking at now. Originally, we just
Pulling
wanted
back the existing seawall to meet what they're asking you to do, and then just building out from that.
Yeah, because they'll allow us to go out to the river, you know, they allow us to go out to the river that same amount of footage, but they don't want a permanent seawall where it exists now, but they'll allow us to go to the pier system and have water underneath it. But so you know, walking on top of it, you never know the difference.
Right. But does that then affect some of the amenities that you proposed for the Riverwalk?
No. different construction method.
How's the grading, if you can point to it, because it's 26 feet to 4 feet that you got to cut it back, or what's the, what do you have to bring it back?
We
And
could
then
have
where
a
is
bunch
that
of
26
hypotheticals
feet?
with the IDNR. I'll sum it up to say this. We continue to work with them. We continue to evolve our engineering with them. We actually sent them another submittal this morning with this updated concept and approach. So we're working with them and working through their process to figure out how we can maintain that, but still give them what they want.
So where's the biggest piece that's got, is it in front of the hotel?
So what we've been fighting for the last year and a half is there is a 28-foot encroachment on the water right here, and it tapers down to 0 by the time it gets to here. It's pie-shaped. All right. In our eyes, there is no benefit to turning that back into water. We would prefer to just encapsulate what's there. It's less of an environmental impact. There hasn't been a single safety incident in 36 years. All of the FEMA flood models are from 2006. It doesn't affect any data. It's a public benefit. It's a proven public benefit with the TIF. We have to prove that it's a public benefit, so legally we're proving that. We're giving back the volume of water that it offsets. We're giving back and then some with our harbor expansion. We are telling them that we're willing to deed it in perpetuity to the village of Johnsburg. We have gone political routes on the Democrat and the Republican side. We have done everything you can possibly imagine to get them to just leave that the way it is. And we basically are being told that unless one of you have Pritzker on speed dial, we have to work with their office to resolve it. So that is the direction that we're going now. We've had this backup plan in our holster, per se, for a long time, and we just started implementing said proposed solution just before 4th of July. I had my civil guys start drawing it up.
So they're going to pull the seawall all the way out, right?
So what we're proposing right now is removing the seawall, and we're proposing going back just a few feet. We don't know how much they're going to want. They've hinted in their letter that maybe it's not all the way, maybe it's some of the way. What is that? We need to determine between meetings and engineering and all the fun stuff that we get to go through.
They're stuck on the 28 feet, but from the discussions I've had, they're willing to negotiate said distance. We don't know where they're going to end up with, but it's not going to be, they're just not going to approve the 28 feet. They want us to see us kind of moved in a little bit inward. So I'm hoping they'll, negotiate a little bit with us and, see the overall benefits of the project. So
to give context, Greg Kelly used to be the regional land manager for the IDNR. So that's why he's on our advisory board and such. He's helping, he knows a lot of the folks over there in that office. So formerly retired, but we're pulling him out of retirement to be on our board. So we're working through it all,
But so bringing it back to the discussion about, again, public benefit and eligibility for the TIF. So nothing, even with those changes with regard to the seawall and the floating pier now, that will still change nothing in terms of the Riverwalk design that you presented to us?
If anything, it would make more TIF eligible dollars, because that is yet another constraint that the project has to contend with and another cost that we're not even currently asking for. But again, we don't want to get in the minutia of, like, we're asking to get to the 7.3. With this new, it's actually more TIF dollars that we could ask for in addition to the 12. Because now instead of simply encapsulating it, we have to pay Brewskis to go out there right here. They were supposed to come. We have to pay them to go out there and rip out the seawall and remove the fill and drive a new seawall and all of that. So.
Yeah, this will substantially increase the cost of the project for the Riverwalk portion of it, which is the public access portion of it. So yeah, unfortunately, that's.
I think it's important to note that the Riverwalk is tied into. We've been looking at it's tied into the public multi-use bike and walking path that's on Chapel Hill. So there's public access from Chapel Hill down to the Riverwalk via stairs and like an ADA railing of sorts, or ramp.
Yeah, I know, that was another point.
And the splash pad was still, it was not impacted whatsoever. Is that correct?
I mean, we have to work through it. There might be a slight realignment, but the goal on our end is to keep all of the fun amenities that we want, that the town's excited for.
That the public's going to benefit from.
But again, those are all predicated on a lot of different bodies allowing for that. Like IDNR, again, is not, per Tim's notes, that's not something within the floodplain that they would typically allow. Is that correct?
Floodplain, they have to compensate and acknowledge it. Floodway, it's not allowed.
And which is this?
Little boat.
Little boat.
So I get it, Josh. We can get super detailed answers. To do that, we need to release final engineering. We need to release design development from architectural. We need to hire structural engineers. We need to hire consultants. We need to do all of that. I need entitlement from the village before we go spend $700,000 on all that.
Right, and that's fine, but again, you're still waiting for a lot of answers for these questions that are outstanding. So it's you know, it's not all on the village. It's everything. But just really quickly, I want to say that my concern is, again, if we're saying we're going to use these TIF funds to fund these public access improvements, all of them, which are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But if they start being picked away, then we're losing that public benefit. And that's what I'm afraid of, agreeing to this now, even though I understand it's in principle, right? And I understand that you need the money, and it's a lot. I don't disagree. But if those, as more information starts to come in, and more of those features disappear, what are we left with? And that's my concern.
They can't. They'll be part of the RDA. Right.
But if we can't do it, how can they be part of the plan?
Well, I think at worst case, there's a realignment of their location. But again, I don't see, we need to get these things running in parallel. This is not a binding document. This is working in good faith, as Matt said, a gentleman's agreement, right? To get things moving in all directions. If I wait, and let's hypothetically say that the DNR takes an additional 6 months, and then we start this process, I've lost my investors, I've lost my lenders, who knows where rates are going to be, the whole project could be sacrificed. We need to get things running in parallel with each other from a scheduling perspective.
But it's safe to say that when the RDA comes out, we should have these answers. I mean, in a perfect world, right? We'd have these answers from IDNR, we'd have these answers from Army Corps Engineers, we'd have these answers from MDOT.
Conversations have been evolving now weekly. So we have transitioned. To give a quick update on MDOT, we have been doing bi-weekly meetings. We've made good progress. There's still a ways to go. But we kind of we talked at the last meeting that the first few meetings it went very well. We thought we were making really good strides, and then we kind of went backwards the last 2 meetings. So as I recognized that we went backwards, I actually asked the group, instead of doing every other week meetings, could we do weekly meetings? So now MDOT has agreed to do bi-weekly small group meetings in between our weekly meeting, our bi-weekly. Basically, I have a MDOT meeting every single Wednesday, okay, is what we're doing. And every single one of those meetings is additional resources, additional capital, additional time. I am putting ourselves, we are absorbing significantly more risk every week that goes by. And Hidden Harbor keeps taking it on. Like, we have to evolve and keep the ball rolling in the other aspects as well, from an entitlement standpoint, but also from a TIF standpoint.
Right, but that's your business. I mean, it's your business. So yeah, you're the one that's going to take on that risk. It's not up to the village to participate in that risk necessarily. So
and if you
that's what I'm saying. We just, again, I don't want to be sitting up here making decisions when we don't know. We just don't know what we're making decisions on. So.
And if you don't have so let's just use the splash pad as an example, but if you don't have the approval to put in the splash pad, we don't have to approve the RDA, right? Essentially. So if you don't have the approval for all these things that we're listing here, we can continue to push the TIF down the road until you
I'm
have
trying to get it to the point that we get the answer, right? And we're one meeting away from having everything approved all at once.
Right.
Right? That's the goal. I can't wait to start all these processes until we have final, like, it'll never happen. We'll kill the whole.
Well, I would send you back to section 7, number 2. It's not limited to MCDOT, it says any governmental authority.
Right, and they're just, yeah, I mean, they're...
Well, I think what Josh is saying, what JD is saying, and everybody's saying is that we understand your part when about moving forward. That's what we did with you tonight. We can work on the TIF and you can move forward on the TIF, but other than that, there won't be any other approvals until we get answers on all these other things, because we want to make sure that we have the clout to do it.
Well, we want to know what it's going to look like.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's a big project, and it's a beautiful project, and you know, again, I really applaud.
But I don't think we
taking it
can
on.
make any
It's
decisions
not
until
easy,
we got those answers.
But we don't know what this is actually going to look like. We don't know what access is going to look like. We don't know what's going to happen exactly with Salem Avenue. We don't. There's just so many unknowns that I don't feel comfortable making a decision without having more information. And this is another one of those, right? We just, there's a lot of things that you're asking for, and I understand the need for the money and how it could be shown as a public benefit to allow you to get it, but these things that you're listing, I mean, you're going to submit them to somebody, but then they may change. So then, you know, you say you want to submit everything and have it ready to go all at one time, but you're not submitting accurate information necessarily.
I would wholeheartedly disagree. I think we're submitting very accurate information. I think the project evolves and it changes over time. And I think, for example, we're willing to put in here, the board can control, basically the concern I keep hearing is that MCDOT is going to change the access to Salem Avenue to right in, right out. And we got burned, we guys say the village got burned, that we approved something with conditional approval. MCDOT changed it after the fact, and the village had no recourse to deny right in, right out. I am handing you the ability to mess with $7.3 million of the Hidden Harbor project if that happens. So I don't understand, there's nothing more that I can give you other than the approval that we've been working on and I continue to work on weekly and allocate time, money, resources.
Again, my concern is if we don't get these things, what's the public benefit? How are we going to sell this to the residents?
There's no TIF dollars if you don't get it.
And then it doesn't, I mean, so...
Then the deal doesn't happen and might out hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, we're simply just, we're approving your ability to start into the research of the TIF.
Yes.
That's all we're approving. We're not approving
Yes.
7.3 million or 50, whatever it is. We are not approving that today. We're not even really approving.
We're approving none of it today.
Yeah,
Right. We're just, well, yeah, I don't know.
We're at first read.
First read, oh, okay. Oh, well, all right. Maybe I missed that part. So.
That's what Mike asked for in the beginning.
Oh.
So, I mean, Michael, is that then binding in any way? If we approved it today, let's say, is that binding to anybody for him to take the next step without it actually being?
The reason I don't believe it's binding is there is going to be, that RDA has to come before you for a vote. Ultimately, that's going to be your decision. So do I think that this is going to preclude you from voting, that if you find that RDA to be unsatisfactory? No, I think you have the ability to vote that way. What the RDA is going to have to address that I haven't wrestled with before in the RDA is, to your point, what happens if?
Yeah.
What happens if this amenity goes away? What happens if this goes away? And I understand that, yes, there's not going to be a TIF-eligible cost if it's not built. But to your bigger question is, this is changing the nature of the project.
And that too. So that is, it doesn't need to go back in front of planning and zoning at that point.
The RDA,
it's time, I get it. But
the RDA will say that this project is going to be built in accordance with the zoning ordinances and the plans attached thereto. Okay? Now, if IDNR or MCDOT change those plans that are part of the zoning ordinance, well then we heard that this will be reflected in the RDA. We have to go back. And if we don't go back and we just build, well, now we're in violation of not only the RDA, but also the zoning ordinances.
Any other questions or discussions we got? This is just the first read, so.
Yeah, sorry, I have one more question. It's kind of spelled out, but again, the legal language is really hard for me to understand. What happens if this goes forward, you get the money, you get the approval, rather. 5 years from now, the project goes under. What happens with all of it? I mean, what happens with the TIF? Because that's associated with the property, right?
So I've been through it. What's going to happen is the lenders are going to foreclose on the loans. You're going to put us in default. You're not going to pay us anything. And it's going to be an issue just as if you approve a planned unit development without a TIF. They started developing and now they ran out of money. The lender's going to come in and they're going to have that's going to be an asset that's collateralized. They're going to
The money that's in the TIF would then be paid back to the lender to...
The lender would come to you and probably negotiate to assume the TIF. And you would have the right, you wouldn't have the obligation, but you would have the right to allow the lender to assume the TIF so long as the lender agrees to abide by the terms and conditions that Michael did.
It'd be the same thing that happened down in Chicago with the Lincoln, or Sterling, what's that called?
Goose Island?
No, Lincoln, yeah, same thing.
But the TIF does not become law, correct?
No. TIF just goes away because it's money.
There's going to be a provision in the RDA in all caps that says this is not a general obligation of the village. The only obligation is the TIF account.
Okay, thank you.
And there are checks and balances in there financially where the village is seeing that those dollars are going towards.
Sure. So boots on the ground, how, I don't know, I'm just going off of experience. I don't know how the village will draft it, but traditionally the certificate of completion will be issued. We had our inspectors go through the village and everything's great. It's beautiful. Here's your certificate. It's been developed in accordance. So then what you do is the developer will have to submit a certificate of eligible costs. Okay. And what that will be is the contracts, the request for payment, the proof of payment, and the lien waivers for all the eligible costs. And we'll have certifications from Michael on there. I swear that these are truthful and this, that, and the other. And whomever is going to be responsible at the village will go through and approve them, or say we have an issue with this one and this one. Where's the lien waiver for this sub and that sub? And we'll work it out. We'll work through it, and then you sign the certification. Now that 7.3 starts collecting interest, and when he pays his taxes, the county will transfer it into the village TIF account, and then the village will pay Michael his share.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? I entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll motion. Motion by Trustee Poe, second by Trustee Sylvanus. On the roll, Trustee Hagan, Trustee Sylvanus, Trustee Von Allen, Trustee Hill, and Trustee.
I wanted to talk more.
I know. You won't make fun of my 7-minute meetings anymore.
When I watch them online, they're only like 15 minutes long.